whether directly or indirectly. Some of you would recall that we had our first commodity export awareness webinar in 2021 during the COVID period. And at that time, we covered fresh produce. I must indicate to you that we got very good feedback out of that initial webinar. And it is those reflections that reveal the impact of these webinars to you, and therefore we continued up until today. We are holding the 5th session, if you were not aware of these impactful seminars or webinars. And this one is a joint initiative between DALAT and NAMC. We have jointly facilitated more workshops covering the red meat, wool, cotton and mohair, and dried fruits, as well as raisin industries. These were part of series of workshops over a variety of commodity groups that we had to undertake. The purpose of this workshop today is for us to discuss and gain more understanding on what it takes to trade and export grains and beans. There are both generic components on where we obtain export assistance and also presentations more specific to grain and bean production for trade and export. Noting that the export have their own risk, we felt that it is important, therefore, to share such and share such and means of preparing for potential and new entrants in the space. Awareness and knowledge are enablers then for our emerging producers to realize equal opportunities to produce for the sophisticated and local international markets. It is also important for them to know about the risk associated with such trade. Export and trade value chain for grains and beans could start with production issues such as production volumes that are necessary to maintain your sustainable export, product quality, and quality assurance, as well as meeting the regulatory requirements of each and every market that could be targeted. In this regard, we have identified and carefully selected a very good a group of speakers that we thought would be able to share the information that is needed. And among those, we can identify the Department of Trade and Industry, which we know that it leads in all the trade and investment of every sector in the country. And they offer a great deal of support for all those that have a potential to export. We also have identified SACTA, SAGRA, the Schoeman Group of the Schoeman Group's Zamukele project, Dry Bean Producer Organization. We also brought in the Directorate Food Safety and Quality Assurance. We also have the Directorate International Trade from our department. If I miss anyone, please refer to our pamphlet that have identified all our key speakers. It is not by intention if I miss anyone. In this regard, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to request you to please help me with your virtual round of applause to welcome everyone in this platform. I'm sure that is possible. We can all do that. Welcome all our key speakers. Welcome you as our guests. Thank you very much. And I also, with such a high level of applause, declare this workshop open and wishing you all fruitful deliberations. And I would like also to extend an apology that I will not be with you full time. I will be in and out to attend other engagements. And the team will continue in the good spirit that that this workshop has been intended and established for. Thank you very much. The workshop is open.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ndingile. Our next speaker will be Nkateko Ngobeni. I hope she's ready and online. We'll give the team a few minutes to upload the presentation for her while I introduce her. I see that there's about 117 people online. So just to repeat again, everyone to mute the mics and to put your email address in the chat box. That will enable our background team to send you all the information, presentations, and also contact details of the speakers if at some point you need to make contact. So our next speaker is Nkateko Ngobeni from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. She's managing and she's got experience in managing the local and international grant funding with the DTI. It's the EMIA, Export Marketing Incentives and Marketing and Investment Scheme. So the EMIA Fund has got over 30 international exhibitions internationally, and she's responsible for all the financial commitments and in complying with the EMIA guidelines, and also see that the DTIC meet accounting standards. The DTIC the EMIA team collaborate with other government entities like ourselves to bring awareness workshops and also to provide all the detail in both financial and non-financial support that the DTIC gives in terms of the incentive schemes. So we welcome Ms. Ngobeni, and she can continue to present if she's on the platform and ready.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction as well as the invitation. As indicated, I am representing the DTIC this morning in terms of export marketing and investment assistance. If we could please move to the next slide, I'll jump right into it. Okay. EMIA is an incentive offered by the DTI to compensate exporters for the cost incurred in respect of identifying new market. So basically what this particular scheme is aiming at is to assist exporters in terms of cost that they incur when they have to go and market their product. Our main objective is to develop new market and also to maintain a relationship with all those countries that we are trading with. We are developing a market for product as well as services, as well as recruiting foreign direct investment into the country. If we could just move to the next slide, please. While we are waiting for the next slide, let me just indicate that EMIA is just one of the incentives that is offered by the DTI. DTI is offering quite a lot of incentives. Within EMIA, we have got different offerings as listed there. We have got group participation whereby we are taking companies in groups, and these groups go to exhibitions. And we also invite foreign companies into the country to come and have business, one-on-one business meetings, as well as conducting site visit into the country. This offering is categorized in terms of a group as indicated. It is also categorized in terms of individual participation. What do I mean by groups? Group is a group of companies whereby this group of companies, they only participate in pre-approved exhibitions. So we've got a list of exhibitions that we go to on an annual basis. As when they were doing the introduction earlier on, they have indicated that we've got over 30 exhibitions that we participate on. So there we group companies according to sectors. Sometimes it is sector specific, and sometimes it is multi-sectoral. So we take this group of companies to a particular event that has been pre-approved on the calendar. If a company, for instance, wants to go to an exhibition that is not on the calendar, then they have to participate under what is listed there as individual participation, meaning there is another section that specifically deals with individuals. So it is another unit that deals with that, but it also forms part of EMIA offerings. And then when another sector, another category that is assisting in terms of EMIA, it is called project funding. This one, we've got sector-specific funding, and we have got capital project feasibility program. Sector-specific, mostly it is aimed at assisting a sector that wants to go and do research in foreign country in terms of in terms of a particular sector. It is aimed at developing a certain sector. And then the second one, which is capital project feasibility program, it is also aimed at doing a feasibility study for capital project related. So that as well, it is dealt with in another section. If we can move to the next slide, please. So what are the requirements that a company needs to meet? As indicated on the previous slide, the different categories, the individual, the group, as well as the sector specific, each and everyone has got its own guidelines, which are available on the DTI website. So with regards to the first one, which is group participation, a company needs to be registered with CIPC. It needs to be trading for more than 12 months. It must submit a brochure. It must be compliant in terms of the status with SARS. They must have a BEE certificate. They must have financial statement. They must have an import and export registration. So all those documents need to be complete in order for a company to even be considered to go for adjudication. Okay, that is just the continuation of the documents that need to be submitted with an application as listed there. I won't go into it as we're going to send through the presentation. If we can move to the next one, how to apply for EMIA funding. A company needs to submit their application 5 months prior to the event.
Nkateko, you are muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We are taking applications for events that are going to be taking place in the next 5 months for group participation. However, for individual participation, as I have tried to highlight the difference between group participation and individual participation. If it's individual participation, then an application needs to be submitted 2 months prior. All the applications are forwarded via email, and companies, if they has to receive an acknowledgement letter just to confirm that the DTI or your application was received, it has to be received. It has to be sent through to you within 48 hours. All applications, after they have all the documents have been submitted, all the applications, they then go to adjudication committee. Then the adjudication committee, it is the one that decides whether a company has qualified or it has not qualified. And then such outcome will be communicated to the company. And if a company feel that they do qualify for whatever incentive that they have applied for. However, they were not successful, they are welcome to contact the director. I'll share the contact details right at the end if you a company wants to appeal the outcome of that particular application. If we can just move to the next slide, please. These are the different sectors that we target. As you can see, it's quite a lot. When I look at the sectors, earlier on I had indicated that with group participation, if we are going to an exhibition, our events, some of them are sector specific, some of them are multi-sectoral. So on that particular list that is pre-approved at the beginning of every financial year, it will specify the type of sectors that are targeted, whether it's multi-sectoral or it is it's sector specific. There is a list of events right at the end of my presentation with all the events that we are going to participate in this financial year. And also on that list, there are a list of contact people that you can contact at the beginning of each and every year, so that they can send you an updated list of events that are relevant for that particular financial year. What are the financial benefits? We pay for all the costs, basically, because we are mostly focusing on assisting emerging companies and companies that are still developing, the Black-owned companies. We pay for basically everything, all the costs that the company is likely to incur in order for that company to go to that particular exhibition or to go and perform that feasibility study. So we'll pay for local cost of travel, as well as the international cost of travel. We'll pay for accommodation. We also pay for exhibition cost. With exhibition cost, we pay 100%, which will include the space, the stand building, the advertising, the branding. We also pay for freight if ever a company has got products that they need to take with to that particular exhibition. We pay for that, and we also do all the logistics with regards to those expenses. With regards to individual participation, when a company wants to go and participate by themselves, that means they're not going to the event that is pre-approved. They have to get approval prior to going to that particular event. So with group participation, you get approval. But with individual participation, a company incurs cost upfront, meaning they pay for everything and then they come back and claim. But with group participation, because these are pre-approved events, we pay for everything in front. So with individual participation, the company needs to come back and claim and support and provide all the supporting documents that are required under individual participation, which is another section, and the contact details are available. And also in terms of group participation, there is that flexibility in terms of etiquette and accommodation, if ever there are those companies who feel like they want to arrange their own travel. However, when they come back and claim, they only claim according to what has been approved. So those are the documents that need to be submitted when a company come back and submit a claim. If we can move to the next slide, please. Companies are required to submit 6 months report back. Actually, it has just been changed recently that they need to submit a report 3 months after the event, 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months after the event. This is just to monitor whether, are there any leads? Is a company making sales in terms of, the event that they have participated on? And this reports, it is what we use to determine, or it's one of the motivations that they need in order to motivate whether we should again participate in this particular event, or we should not participate, because there are quite a lot of international events that are out there. So we need to go to the events that we know that indeed there will be return on investment if we participate in this particular event. Participants failing to submit reports will therefore be excluded from accessing EMIA funding for a period of 24 months. So even if a company did not make sales, that reports are required. They need to be submitted, just to say that we haven't made sales, or you have made leads, or whatever the case is, so that we know that you know, where are we standing in terms of this particular event. Just a feedback to assess to assess that particular show. And with regards to the last point, it says that site visits will be conducted by the DTIC to confirm the existence of the company, to verify the manufacturing process, or to verify the information submitted during the application stage. That is just when you sign an approval letter, you are actually agreeing that if a DTIC wants to come and conduct a site visit, your company will be available. You will allow the DTIC officials to come and conduct a site visit based on the information that you have provided. Companies are selected randomly in terms of conducting this particular site visit. It's not all the companies, I mean, each and every company that goes into exhibition that we go and conduct site visit. With regards to the slide, this is the list of pavilions that were approved for the 2023-2024 financial year.
Right.
Someone is talking in the background. Okay, thank you. This is a list of events for 2023-2024 financial year. As I've indicated, we are taking applications for events that are going to be taking place 5 months from now, and the closing date are listed there on the event, on the list, and also the contact details are listed. These are the people that you can you communicate with during the application process, also on an annual basis, when you are looking for a list for that financial year, for the next financial year, so that you can be able to plan properly in terms of the events that you're going to be participating in that particular year. Next slide, please. Okay, here are the contact details of the relevant officials. As you can see there, there's individual participation, and then there's group participation, which is the national pavilion. And with regards to sector-specific funding and capital project feasibility program, that information, the contact details, they are not here, but they are on the DTI website. When you go to the DTI website, you go under menu, and it says financial assistance, and then under financial assistance, there's sector specific. Actually, there's all the funding that the DTI is offering. Also, under guidelines, there will be contact details of the officials that you can contact when you want to submit information, or you want to inquire more about that particular funding that the DTI is offering. Next slide, please. Okay, that basically is the end of my presentation. I'll hand over back to the program director. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mkubeni, for this good presentation, for joining us. I'm asking everybody to stay online. There will be a questions and answer session after the next presentation. Currently, there's 162 people on the platform. I just want to call again that everybody mute their speakers, that drop your email in the chat box so that the backup team can send you all the presentations when they are available, and also that there is a step-by-step exporter manual available in the chat box. It's on the DALRAT website, on the departmental website as well, where you can find step-by-step how the requirements to export as a document, source document. I'm introducing our next speaker. The backup team can start flighting maybe the presentation while I introduce Mr. Andrew Bennett. He's from the South African Cultivar Technology Agency. He's the CEO of SACTA. By profession, he's an entomologist, and he's got experience in managing new technologies, especially seed development and the commercialization of biotechnology, seed like cotton and maize, and also herbicide-tolerant maize, soybean, and cotton. He holds an MSc degree, and he's going to present to us the support provided by the organization to emerging farmers and how to access the support on seed. Is Mr. Bennett available?
Yes, I'm here. So thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate the invitation that SACTA has received. And as I say, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to tell you a little bit about what we get up to. And I think it fits in really well. So again, our sincere thanks to the organizers for giving us this opportunity to be involved. Thank you very much. If we can go to the next slide. I would very much like this will be a kind of a two-part presentation. So I will just give you a quick background on how SACTA works and where it comes from. We'll have a little bit on how the levy is utilized, and then the major part of the presentation my colleague Sandile will give to you on exactly how we get involved in the transformation process and how we support particularly grain farmers in South Africa. So to start off with, SACTA is a non-profit company and it's run according to the Companies Act. Our main responsibility is to administer the statutory levies on certain self-pollinated grain crops. And in that process, we distribute the collected levies to seed company beneficiaries, and we deploy some of the funding then into transformation. The purpose of the levy is to support breeding programs and developing new varieties, and to support transformation mainly through enterprise development, skills development, and socio-economic development. And these are more kind of ad hoc projects in rural areas, but Sandile will tell you a little bit more on that. I'd just like to explain the rationale behind the establishment of the SACTA levies. So with certain self-pollinated crops, particularly crops like soybean and wheat, farmers are permitted to retain some of the grain that they've harvested to use as seed in the following season, and many farmers do this. This, however, has had a negative kind of effect over time in that breeding companies, seed companies, no longer invest in breeding new varieties that are more productive because they tend only to sell those varieties once. And if it's a good variety, then the farmer keeps the seed and he plants his subsequent crops from that. So SACTA was introduced to collect a levy on every ton of grain delivered or sold, traded, and then to feed that levy back into two channels. One, back to the seed companies, according to their calculated market shares. And then the second part is to support transformation, as I said, particularly through enterprise development and skills development. So we kind of act as an agent on behalf of the seed companies, but we also are very involved in the transformation space as well. And then, yeah, for what it's worth, our financial year runs from the 1st of March to the 28th of February. So just very quickly, if we look at a normal SACTA year, on the wheat or water cereal side, those crops are generally planted in around April and harvested towards the end of the year, November, December, whereas the summer crops like soybean are planted now in spring and tend to be harvested around April, May, June the following year. So it's important to realize that the marketing of these grains doesn't take place during the actual growing season. So if we look at the winter grains, the marketing season starts in October, 1st of October, and runs into the next year to the 30th of December. On the soybean side, it's a bit less complicated. You can see it starts on the 1st of March and runs through to the end of February. So the soybean marketing season fits into a financial year, but a winter grain marketing season falls over 2 years, and this can sometimes be a little complicated when you're collecting levies and things like that. Anyway, that's probably not that important. I think what's important is that we make an application for a levy every 2 to 3 years. On winter cereal side, the levies, we normally make an application to last for 3 years, 3 seasons. And on the soybean side, it's a 2-year application. For the levy is granted for 2 years, and then you have to make another application. These applications are essentially managed by the National Agricultural Marketing Council, and they advise the minister, based on the application, whether the levy should be promulgated or not. Having said all of that, a statutory levy requires that 20% of the levy collected is spent on transformation activities. So I thought I'd just give you a quick breakdown then of how the levies, monies or the funds are managed. And basically for every 100 Rand of levy collected, the statute makes provision for a 2.5% or R2.50 to be paid to the actual people that collect the levy when the grain is delivered. And then on what's left, we take 20% to one side for transformation spend. We do have some admin costs, which we are able to keep very low, below 3%. And then the balance goes back to the seed companies to incentivize them to breed better and more productive varieties that then helps the whole sort of farming industry. If you look at our transformation spend, we follow very much the NAMC guidelines on how that 20% is used. The majority of it, 60% and more, goes into enterprise development. And Sandile will talk more on each of these. Also skills development and socio-economic development. There's a portion of that that is used for paying the service providers that manage the enterprise development and skills development and bursaries and so on. And we call that transformation management. We can go to the next slide. I want to go rather more quickly and then Sandile more time to deal with the nuts and bolts. But it's important for us, it's the commercial farmers that are paying these levies. So it's important that they see what returns they get on that. And just to give you a broad sort of picture, SACTA's only been around since for about 5 years or so, and we have made available for breeding and technology just over 400 million rands in those different commodities you can see there, the majority being spent on soybean, but a lot on wheat, barley, oats, and lupins as well. And then the seed companies that receive those monies have developed new varieties that have come into the market. And we can see, for example, on the wheat and soybean side, that upward of 40, 50 new varieties have been registered and available to farmers. Now, this is something that probably would not have happened if this levy had not been in place. That investment would not have been there. However, maybe the most exciting response or part of all of this, we don't say SACTA's responsible for it, it's a joint industry agriculture effort, but the response to the soybean market particularly has been really, truly amazing. 10 years back, South Africa was importing 1.5 million tons probably of soybean. Today, we are able to export soybean. The past 2 seasons, we've been exporting soybean. And interestingly, the number of hectares of soybean planted this past season exceeded the number of yellow maize hectares for the first time. And the graph on the right shows how basically over the last 10 years or so, we've had no soybean exports, but the last 2 seasons, these have increased markedly. So just as by introduction to Sandile, the breeding and technology levy is statutory, therefore 20% of the levy income is allocated to transformation projects. As I said earlier, this is done strictly according to NAMC guidelines. And I'd now like to hand over to Sandile to explain how those transformation funds are applied. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Andrew Bennett.
Hello.
I'm just asking everybody to mute.
Sorry.
There's a background team that can just mute.
Kunjan. My friend to Fortune.
Background team, just mute, please. I just want to introduce Mr. Sandile Mahlangu as the co-presenter. Thank you very much, Mr. Andrew Bennett, for the first part of the presentation. Stay with us for the questions and answer. Then I hand over to Ms. Sandile Mahlangu. He's also from the South African Cultivar Technology Agency. He's the transformation manager. He's an agricultural economist, and he's got a decade of experience in facilitate training and developing enabling mechanisms for smallholder farmer to close the gap. And we hand over for him for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you. I think I'll just take over from what Andrew had said already. With the 20% of the levy that SACTA collects, it's being used for transformation. And just to elaborate on what Andrew had said in terms of the 100 Rand collected, at least being guided by the NAMC guideline, at least 60% we spend on enterprise, 18% it's on skill development, 17% it's for management control, and then the 5% that remains, it's on socio-economic. To outline SACTA transformation strategy, as SACTA, our main aim is to develop independent and sustainable farmers or enterprises. And we initially are prioritizing the enterprise and skill development, but not necessarily that we ignore socioeconomics and other pillars as guided by the guidelines. But we thought it will help as an organization to try and face our development so we can have a proper pathway into having an impact in transformation. Activities are conducted through service providers. These are reputable service providers who approach us, and we kind of go through and assess them if whether they will help us achieve what we want as SACTA. SACTA does not focus on the number of farmers supported, but on the quality. And this also has been the guide and the approval of NAMC, who also saw an interest in, let us not focus on the number of farmers, but let's make sure when we are involved in an enterprise, we are able to get the desired results. One of the key highlights of SACTA, we allow crop rotation, and this is informed by the farming needs of farmers themselves, who also are advising that the monoculture at times it affects their profitability and productivity as an enterprise. The other is also the fact that we collect levies from multiple crops as SACTA, as probably compared to other trusts or those who collect levies. We are working towards a holistic approach, and this holistic approach, it's our dream as SACTA to make sure that we consider a farm as a whole. We treat the farm as a unit because we understand most farmers don't necessarily do crops, but they also have other enterprises, and it's our desire to look into a farm as a unit, look into their socioeconomic or other socioeconomic factors that affect the farm, also involve all in other stakeholders that are involved in that farm. And with this, our hope is this holistic approach will be possible if we have all the stakeholders involved and we have other guys approaching, and we partner and collaborate in making sure that we have commercial or sustainable farmers. Who qualifies for SACTA or to be supported by SACTA? And you will note that as SACTA, we don't necessarily give grants to a farm, but we give an interest-free loan for 3 years. But people who qualify are farmers in the grain or enterprises in the grain and oil seeds. You must be from a designated groups, be a South African. One must own or have access to 50 plus arable land, belong to one of our service providers, but also it can be a new capable service provider that will go through those assessments, that those farmer, a group of farmer or a farmer, they can come and approach SACTA to partner with them. Who are these service providers that we work with? One, it should be a service provider who will be able to handle and also distribute loans to those farmers, but be able to mentor and coach or provide technical support to farmers. Also be a registered business that has been working in the agricultural space as well. We sign a tri-party agreement when a farmer meets the criteria. The reason I'm highlighting this tri-party agreement is because then a farmer has a relationship with SACTA, but also has a relationship with the service provider. So we are all responsible in that relationship, and make sure the loan is repaid, but also make sure that we support the farmer to their needs. These are the initiatives we currently have under enterprise development. As I've said, that we provide a 3-year interest-free loan. One of the initiatives that we are engaging is to provide input finance. This input finance covers all the required variable inputs for the season. The loan is made available to a farmer for 3 years, but evaluated seasonally. Enterprise budgets are developed by the farmer and the service provider. We also encourage that these farmers are more involved in their businesses than a service provider taking over and making decisions on behalf of a farmer. Service providers are expected to provide mentorship as well. Each farmer is treated as an individual. Yes, there is that service provider will apply for a cohort of farmers, but we treat each farmer as an individual. We don't treat them as a group. The farmer will make that application service provider will also do their need analysis of what the farmer needs, when and how. The second initiative that we have is a mechanization finance. We fund any farming equipment as relevant to the grain and oilseed. This equipment can be new or pre-owned, but we also do improvement. As we know, a farmer might have an existing planter that needs to be improved, maybe increase in terms of rows or other things. The other initiative we do is business coaching and mentorship. This is provided by a service provider and based on the needs of a farmer or of the group of those farmers. Just to show on our achievements over years, Andrew had showed of what the levy has contributed towards the industry, but then in terms of transformation, you'll pay attention on the total number of hectares that we have planted. Looking at the graph on the right-hand side, you will look from 2013 to date, we have been increasing in terms of the land size that we have supported and financed through those service providers. We sit around 7.5 hectares of those, with the main crop being soya beans, but we also have maize and wheat that are playing a major role in those farms, and all of our farmers are delivering their crop into formal markets, of which it's also a benefit. And obviously, we know a grain sector, everyone almost deliver their crop to a silo, and this makes sure we have seen an increase in profit margins for farmers, even on 10 hectares, where they're making good profits, and that has been a benefit to those farmers. Just to show the income and expenditure of SACTA since 2019 to date, maybe just focusing on also just on how much we have spent in transformation. As we have seen, we said about 60% goes into enterprise. These total numbers include also skills and other transformation initiatives, but a significant amount of even more than 70% of this money was spent on loans towards farmers. You can see already we have money that is sitting with farmers, because this become more of a revolving loan that farmers sit with for 3 years. We have about more than 80 million that is circulating, farmers that are using to get input seasonally, but also others which they've used for mechanization. We're projecting to spend about 53 million for financial year 2024. And already we have been receiving applications from service providers, all the new service providers, as we go through assessments, and we are hoping this money will reach the hands of a farmer. We're actually not hoping, but we know that it will reach the hands of the beneficiaries of the transformation initiatives that we have as SACTA. To share some of the comments that we got from farmers and service providers regarding how SACTA works, as it provides a loan and which sits with the service provider for a period of 3 years. Farmers and service providers are happy that the SACTA funding allows farmers to do things on time, because you will know if we fund you on the first year, you sit with that money for 3 years, then it's easy to access that amount and to make a new application every year. Also, the flexibility of the crop that a farmer can plant, but obviously mixing it with a crop or rotating it with a crop that we collect levy on. Farmers have already started realizing the benefits of crop rotation with soya. They were appreciating that in terms of production or yields are increasing, especially for maize, where they planted soya the previous year. Mechanization project has a great potential to propel farmers to good commercialization path. Farmers have started to build valuable relationship and track records with input suppliers, off-takers, and banks. They are becoming a bit bankable. I think one of the highlights with this, and I will just mention Grain SA because they're also part of this, they managed to graduate other farmers to a commercial bank where they are able now, because of SACTA, we have been with them for 3 years or less than 3 years now. Those farmers are able to access some loans or assistance from a commercial bank. Then there are also some on-farm jobs that are created which benefit the communities and local economy. For farmers who are willing, or service providers who are willing to get in touch with us, you can visit our SACTA website, and also feel free to email me or Andrew. There's our email, but also you can get those contacts through Singita or other guys who are in support. We thank you guys for the opportunity to let us share SACTA achievements and where we want to go, but we are also inviting collaborators and partners to partner with us in making sure that this initiative is a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahlangu. We now open the session for questions and answers. The questions and answers can relate to the first presenter from the DTIC on the EMIA incentives, as well as the support provided by SACTA in terms of seed and loans. So please go ahead, raise your hands, press the little hand button so that our team can alert me if there's any hands and any questions. We want to request everyone, the newcomers, to put your emails on the message box so that our team can send you the necessary information, but also that they can inform you of any information like the step-by-step exporter manual that we've got available on the website, presentations, as well as contact details of our presenters if you need to get in contact with them. Any hands for a question? We allow about three questions and answers, and then we'll proceed to the next presentation. Please go ahead. I got SN guest. Just tell your name, your organization, and go ahead.
Okay, I'm Sonny from London. I wanted to ask, is the meeting recorded? Also, you talked about the website that there's a step-by-step website that where we can find. Which website is that? Thank you.
Thank you, Sonny. The next person, the next person, Golo Nkobeni.
Oh, thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. I'm Mrs. Ndobeni. The name of the co-op is Kamla Mzansi Co-op. My first question is for DTIC. How do they assist farmers or SMEs in the export readiness program? How can we access the export readiness program? And then how can they assist also just to assist us in the EMIA completion of that form? Because sometimes I find that it's difficult just to mentor us. And then another question is that, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. And another question, okay, is that how can we be listed on their, what do I call, for those people who, so that we can be able to get all the relevant information from DTIC that relate to business, to be on the emailing list, something like that. I don't know how to state that, but so that we can be aware of what is going to happen when and so forth, which relates to business. Like, for example, if they're going to have, sometimes they have virtual meetings, so that we can be able to get those virtual meetings? How can they register us? What are we supposed to do? Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. We've got your question. The next question is Mkhomo Mokori Peke. You can go ahead.
Good morning, thanks, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I just want to ask, my question is directed to SACTA in connection with the crops that or maybe they are supporting. I'll just mention. I saw that they say that mostly is self-pollinated crops, but I don't see sorghum as one of them. I don't know, maybe what it might be the reason. And the second one, just for the sake of interest, I know millet is mainly cross-pollinated, but this year we are celebrating the International Year of Millet, and I don't know, maybe then don't they see any chance of maybe in the near future supporting the millet production in South Africa? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Fourth question, Jeff Klela, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jeff Klela. I'm a grain farmer in a couple area, KZN. So mine is more of a comment than a question. I'm a beneficiary of SACTA. I've been with them for the past 3 seasons now. And I would just like to just leave a comment that to encourage farmers who are starting up in grains to really try and apply to the SACTA funding program. It's an interest-free loan, which has helped me to start my farming operation. Not start my farming operation, but just continue from where I've left off, or where I had been when they started with me, and it has really helped a lot. To, like Sandile was saying, you get to build relationships with your suppliers, and it is a trust thing that happens as well. So it does really help farmers starting up or just to try and go from there to the next level. So I really encourage farmers to join up with SACTA. It will really do good for them. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. The last question from Solomon Naphtali, and then we're going to go over to our presenters that will give feedback. Solomon, you can unmute and speak. Okay, I'm not sure if there's a problem there. Is it a, can you go ahead?
Maybe he can write his question on the chat box.
Solomon, it seems that your connection is a bit weak. You're not coming through. So if you can write it on the chat box, and then my team will pick up on that and ask the question. So the first question is on the step-by-step. The link is on the message box. Our background team will put it again there, but if you drop your email, we can send you that information. But the step-by-step is on the DALRAT website, the Department of Agricultural Land Reform and Rural Development website. It's better if we send you the link, or if you pick up the link on the message box, because sometimes you could find it a bit difficult to navigate your way on the website and find it. Then the second question by Nogzola about the DTIC, our DTIC presenter, Ms. Nkobeni, do you have all three questions? The first is about how DTIC can assist emerging farmers with export readiness, whether EMIA forms to complete that, and how to receive emails from the email list. Please go ahead if you're on the platform.
Thank you. Yes, the DTIC does have a program where they assist companies with regards to export readiness. It is a program that is run by the export development section. It is another section that is within what is called the exports section. We used to know it as TISA, but the new name it's now export. So my colleague Randani is the one who is responsible for that. So the way it works is that they do these programs per province on groups. So it has to be a certain number of people that submit their, I think there's an application form that companies need to submit to export development. And then when they have reached a certain number of applicants, that is when they organize that particular workshop, and then they come to the relevant province and train the potential exporters. And with regards to emails, with regards to events, it all depends on what is it that the company needs assistance with, because there are different sections that deals with different things. As I've indicated, I am from the group participation. There's another section that deals with individual participation when it comes to exhibitions. And then there's this section that I was talking about, the export development section that deals with developing exporters in terms of training them on how to export. So you need to know what you want, and then we will be able to refer to you to that particular section, and then you will be able to communicate with that particular person. There is no generic email that you can get all answers. However, there is the export help desk. I think maybe they can be a point of contact that you can send your email to, and then they will refer you to the relevant section that will be able to assist you. So the email address is export help desk, one word, at the dtic.gov.za. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that answer. Our next question is Mr. Homo. He was asking SACTA about millet and about sorghum. You don't see those pollinators. So please, if anybody from SACTA can answer that.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Homo. It's a very relevant one. And at SACTA, we actually pride ourselves that we're very flexible in the crops to which the interest-free loans can be applied. So we're moving more and more to the position where we see a farming enterprise as a diverse unit that's made up of lots of different aspects to that farm. So we would, you're more than welcome to use the funding to fund any crop, so long as somewhere in that 3-year period we have either wheat or soybean, one of the crops that actually delivered the levy in that. We see, as Sandile said as well, the benefits of crop rotation are huge, and actually it's very important that crop rotation takes place on a farm. If you keep planting the same crop over and over again, you're actually going to debilitate the soils and so on your farm. So very flexible, We do not give loans specifically for sorghum or millet, but if sorghum or millet could be incorporated in the crop rotation cycle on your farm, we would certainly fund that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have Solomon's question? Did he manage to put it on the box, or does he want to try again?
Thank you. I just put it in the box, but I will ask. I just got disconnected. The question is both for SACTA and DTI. I just wanted to find out if there are programs that they support for the cannabis industry, which is quite new.
Can DTIC answer? I'm sure it's for all the crops, but is there any support? I'm not sure. Can this funds be used for cannabis? Is that a alternative crop? I'm not sure.
Hemp in particular. Thank you.
This is Andrew from SACTA. I can respond to that as well. Basically, we've never had a request for funding any cannabis production yet. It's a very interesting question, but the same answer that I gave for the millet and the sorghum applies as well. So if this is a crop that can be rotated with the crops that fund our levies, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And DTIC, I'm sure there's no specific program for cannabis, but any crop that's export orientated can qualify for EMIA. Just confirm. Mr. Nkobeni, just confirm.
Yes, you are right. We're not in terms of we don't focus on the product. We focus on on the guidelines. Which guidelines does it fall under? I mean, I believe this will be under agro processing, so it will fall under that sector, not a particular product. Thank you.
Thank you. So may we continue to the next presenter, and at some point we'll provide a short break after the next two presentations, but let's continue to the next presentation.
Ezra?
Yes.
Before we can continue, there are some questions for SACTA on the chat box, so I'm not sure whether we can take them now or the SACTA reps can go and respond there. I think there are 2 or 3. From Nokolo, it's 2. She is asking if there is any criteria that SACTA check for a farmer to qualify for funding. For example, her co-op is male dominated. Are there no restrictions? And the other one, she says, is there an affiliation fee to be a member of SACTA? If yes, how much? Yeah, I think it's those 2 questions.
I'm not sure, Singita, maybe I can just respond to them quickly.
No, it's fine. And then the other ones, maybe you can just, because I see there is a lot of them, maybe you can just go there and then answer the other ones. So you can answer those 2.
Okay, no, it's fine. Thanks. And on the criteria, yes, we do. I mentioned a few in terms of the land. You need to have access to land or own the land. But also it should be, because it's a grain, it should be around plus minus 50 hectares, and you can be a cooperative or an individual we fund. We don't have an affiliation as SACTA. We treat, there's no affiliation fee as well. We just but unfortunately, you don't work with us directly as SACTA. You will work with us through a service provider who will take care of you in terms of technical and also handling your loan. I will then respond to others on the chat. Thank you, Chair. Oh, thank you to Jeff Hlela as well for his positive comment. We appreciate.
Mr. Chair, there's also
there's an echo there. Singita, was it
sorry
you?
about that. Can you please ask Miss Ngateko to answer Salamina's question on the chat box as well? Thank you.
Thank you. With regards to assisting, I see here, how do we go about assisting the TIC to identify other key trade shows, especially in agro-processing and agriculture? As I've indicated, the DTI has got pre-approved list. So those ones, there's not much that you can do about it. However, if you are falling under an export council, organized entities are allowed to can be included in the list. Remember that particular list exhibition, once it is approved, it is not only going to cater for a specific organization, it has to cover all the provinces. It has to cover everyone because a list is put out there for everyone to apply. However, if that particular proposal is not accepted, that is when you go to individual participation. And then you apply under individual participation. Then you can go and participate as an individual company. So that is how basically it works. I hope I've answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see there's a lot of questions. Some of it is technical. Could I ask the support team to write them down and to answer those questions to the relevant persons? Is there, back Singita and team, is there any of these questions that we should answer now? I think maybe we can make a list of the questions, get them answered by SACTA, and then circulate them. Just remember that there's 196 people on the platform currently. Please put your email address on the chat box so that we can circulate the information to you. As far as I know, this session is recorded and all the presentations are available. We'll take stock of all the remaining questions, get answers for it, and then circulate that as well. Could that be an amiable solution for all the other questions? I'm just asking my background team, should we proceed now after having deal with a number of questions?
I suggest that let the speakers try to respond to the questions on the chat as we proceed with the program. Thank you.
Okay, so let's proceed then. And then there will be another opportunity for that. and we will make sure that all questions is documented and that answers are provided. It's quite a few questions coming through. Our next presenter then is Dr. Roy Shoko. He's from the South African Grain Farmers Association, SAGRA. He is a senior executive with SAGRA, and he's got a passion for sustainable development and driving projects focused on agricultural and rural development. He's a professional in agricultural economics, has got a doctor's degree in agricultural economics and an MBA, and he's going to tell us the involvement of SAGRA in supporting emerging grain producers. And then we welcome Dr. Shoko. Please go ahead if you are ready and are available on the platform.
Thank you so much. Let me just flight my presentation quickly. Please confirm if you can see it.
Yes, it's fine. It's fine.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure and an honor to have been invited to this event. So I'd like to thank the department for inviting SAGRA so that we can showcase what we do. And my job is actually a simple one because the chunk of the work is being done in the field. So my name is Roy Shoko, and I'm from the South African Grain Farmers Association, and I'll be taking you through our presentation. Let me move to the next slide. So in terms of the contents of the presentation, I'll give you a bit of context and background in terms of who are we as SAGRA. Then after that, I'll then take you through some of the programs that we have within the organization. And then after that, I'll reflect on one of our flagship program, which is the LDS program. Then after that, I'm just going to take you on how we deliver our mandate as an organization. And thereafter, I'll conclude. So I think most of you will be asking yourselves the question, who is SAGRA? Or who is the South African Grain Farmers Association? So SAGRA, it's a non-profit organization that is incorporated under South African legislation. SAGRA was founded by Black grain producers from various grain producing regions of South Africa. I think all of you understand the nature of our grain industry. And the mandate of SAGRA is to assist Black producers so that we increase their participation in the industry. So SAGRA is a voluntary commodity membership-based organization that represents the interests of Black developing commercial grain farmers in South Africa. We also support subsistence farmers. We also support smallholder farmers. We also support small-scale farmers. But what is important is to ensure that grain enterprises, especially grain enterprises for Black producers, they become sustainable. SAGRA is registered as a directly affected group in line with the Marketing of Agricultural Products Act. So this also allows us to participate in industry forums and also comment on any issues that affect the industry. So in terms of our mission is to build a resilient system for sustainable Black integrated farming enterprises. And our mission is to transform small-scale farmers into commercial farmers. We want to see more graduations. We want to see more successful and sustainable Black enterprises. We contribute towards food security. We also promote the capacitated or the capacity to, we also promote the capacitated in terms of the developing of quality farmers through development initiatives. We also lobby for rural development and improve infrastructure. I think you also understand the demographics of our country in that there are areas that still have very little infrastructure. So we also lobby for that so that there is an improvement in infrastructure in those areas. So going to our specific objectives, we serve as a mouthpiece for grain and oilseed producers in South Africa. And we also organize subsistence, communal, smallholder, and commercial farmers. Remember, when farmers are isolated, sometimes they need an organization to lead them. And we believe us as SAGRA, we come in there, we consolidate them, and they're negotiating for them, be it with suppliers, be it with potential buyers, and also promote, drive, and deliver effective, impactful development to all grain and all seed producers in South Africa. But our utmost aim is to transform small Black farmers into commercial farmers. But most importantly, we also raise awareness about sustainable farming practices, because we also understand the importance of conserving our environment and biodiversity. We also work towards influencing agricultural policies to create an enabling environment for sustainable agriculture. That is why we always comment. We have a say in some of the policies that are promulgated. We also make sure that some of those policies, they serve the interest of our producers. So in terms of our key commodities, we do have a variety of commodities that our farmers produce. We have maize, we have sunflower. So most of our farmers, they actually prefer those two crops, which is maize and sunflower. We also have wheat, grain sorghum, soya beans, dry beans, oats, canola, barley, which are your winter cereal, barley and wheat. You also have small white beans and also your indigenous grains, and millet also falls under that blanket. Then in terms of our specific programs, I'll just take you through each one of them. We do have the commercialization and enterprise development. So in this program, we seek to develop and commercialize the Black farmers. So basically what we believe in is rural wealth creation. We actually want to see the social and economic statuses of our people changing. We also have a program in training and capacity building, because we believe that you cannot farm if you do not get the right training. That is where capacity building comes in. So we actually have a team, which I'm going to talk to later on, which actually help us to fulfill that mandate. Then we also promote the participation of Black farmers in the upstream of the value chain. Remember, primary production doesn't have money. Farmers, they don't make money from primary production. They make money if they process some of their produce. So that is what we drive our farmers to do. Then in terms of agro-logistics and mechanization, we also promote the introduction of high-tech mechanization in agriculture. I think things have changed, and now people have moved away from your traditional farming methods. I think agriculture has become more mechanized. So we actually try to promote that so that our farmers, they adopt some of those mechanization. Then in terms of syndicate groups, we also believe that our farmers should get together. So our farmers, every 2 weeks, we do have programs in our provinces where they meet our provincial coordinators and discuss some of the challenges and also share learnings, right? I think this is for us important in terms of their capacity building, in terms of capacity building, and also sustaining the agricultural enterprises. And then now I just want to delve a bit deeper into the commercialization and enterprise development. So in terms of SAGRA, we provide comprehensive support through various stages of production. So as you can see in the display, we started procurement and delivery of inputs. So we actually consolidate or aggregate, right, our procurement, and we purchase various inputs, be it seeds, be it fertilizer for our farmers, and then after that we actually assist with land preparation, right? So we actually lobby with companies that provide mechanization. We also plant for our farmers, and also we spray for them. So these are just various stages of production. And also we assist with continuous monitoring. We do actually have information systems that we use, and we have legs on the ground that actually assist us in the monitoring process. We also assist in terms of technical support. Here in the photo, we actually have our mentor, Mr. Josiah, who's wearing a hat. So we have various mentors that actually assist us to go into these areas and assist our farmers. Then in terms of harvesting, I also assist our farmers as well. And just to give you a little bit of case study, because some of you you may need to understand exactly some of the work that we have done. So I just want to zoom into this case study. It was actually one of the projects we implemented in Jozini, and this program, it was the FPSU program, which was funded by the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. So when we got to Jozini, there were actually 32 farmers who were seeking support. So what we did, we consolidated the group of farmers, and we procured, I remember the stages that I showed in the previous slide, we procured for them, and those 32 farmers included 20 women and 12 men, because we also believe in gender diversity. And the land that was available for production, it was 174 hectares. It was actually communal land, right? So what you need to understand is that farming in isolation as a Black farmer doesn't work. What is important is to consolidate our efforts, then we buy together and also benefit from economies of scale. So that is what exactly we did. We procured for all the farmers, and we brought the inputs, and we brought the equipment, and the area that was harvested is 170, and the total jobs created in the area is 88, right? Some of you may be asking, I think looking at the pictures to the right-hand side of the presentation, these are some of the pictures we actually took during some of our site visits. What you need to understand is that Jozini is remote, and it's actually difficult to access mechanization for harvesting dry beans. So imagine this dry bean, it was harvested manually, you know, but for us, that actually served well because it created quite a lot of jobs to be able to harvest it, to harvest that land. And in total, the farmers managed to harvest 204 tons. So this is just a case study. Then in terms of training and capacity building, I think, as I alluded earlier, training it forms an integral part of promoting sustainable agricultural enterprises. And as SAGRA, we do have mentors. We also have agronomists and also provincial coordinators who go into the field and interact with our farmers. So you can see some of the photos that we took during some of the meetings we have with our farmers. So the photo that is top right corner, it was actually taken in Northwest there. You can actually see it's actually one of our syndicate groups or meetings that we hold in that area. And the one that is bottom right, it's actually one of our mentors who was interacting, engaging with some of the farmers on the ground. And then the photo to bottom left, it's actually our provincial coordinator who is engaging with one of our farmers. So for us, training is not just classroom, it's also practical. We're going to the field and physically interact with the farmers. So as I mentioned earlier when I began the presentation, that the LDS program is one of our flagship program, and I would like to extend my appreciation to the department for giving us an opportunity to implement this program, because to date they've trusted us with 72 LDS grain farms. And remember, these are state farms that the government buys. And remember, once they buy a grain farm, they do allocate to SAGRA, because there is a trust between us, and we believe that this program is working, and we have seen it working. And I also believe that the lives of the farmers have been changed through this program. So currently we are sitting at 72 farms, and the total beneficiary is actually 104, comprised of 8 males and 24 females. So I'm sure those who advocate for gender balance, they're questioning why there is a high number of males. And so I think that one, it will soon change because the program is growing tremendously. Then in terms of farm information, we're currently responsible for 50,405 arable land, and in total, so it's actually 18,000 arable land, but the total extent of all those farms is 50,000. And just to show you the impact of this program, if I had more time, I would have unpacked it, but I'll just share with you just a synopsis of what we have been collecting. So before the intervention, there were 268 permanent jobs that had been created by these farms, and 251 temporary. But after implementation, there were jobs that were added. Permanent, it's 112, temporary, 401. And in total, looking at the 72 farms, the program has created 1,032,000 jobs. So the implementation is usually for 5 years. SAGRA, the farmer, and the department, they do enter into a tripartite agreement. Yeah. But obviously, once that tripartite agreement ends, right, we don't just leave the farmer to go on his or her way. We do support them because obviously we need to look for additional, maybe blended farming solutions that the farmer can possibly benefit from. Then these are some of the photos that we took during the handover of high-tech agricultural equipment. So the farmers, they don't just receive any basic equipment, they receive high-tech equipment, because we believe for us to feed the growing population, we actually need to take technology seriously. So that is why you see some of these equipment you see, they're similar to the ones that are used by your mega grain farmers in this country. So that is the culture that I think the department wants to cultivate, so that to ensure that these farms, they become productive. Then these are some of the photos we took this year during harvest for our farmers. As you can see, in Free State, farmers harvesting in Limpopo. You can see the combined harvesting sunflower. Northwest, there's soybean harvesting, and also Gauteng there. So, and these are also some of the pictures that we took. And remember, harvesting was, it actually took place between July and August. Yeah. So the program is in all the provinces, and us, we are responsible for the grain commodities, or the grain farms in particular. So I think after having said all this, some of you be asking, how does SAGRA manage to fulfill on or deliver on their mandate? How do we pull this one off? So we cannot do this work without our team. So obviously we have a vibrant, young, dedicated team of professionals, which includes agronomists, mentors, and agricultural economists. And I'm actually proud to say this, that the average age of our employees is less than 40, because we also want to drive youth employment in the country. So if you come to SAGRA, I'm sorry to say this, you won't meet the elderly. It's young people, vibrant, because we believe that agriculture, especially the future of agriculture in this country, lies in the hands of young people. And then in terms of partnerships and collaborations, we recognize the importance of collaboration. I mentioned the department earlier because they've done so much for us. So we're in partnership with the government, private sector entities, academic institutions, NGOs, commodity organizations, our fellows. They assist us in so many ways, and also farmer associations. So by forging these alliances, we leverage collective expertise, resources, networks, and drive sustainable agricultural development and create lasting impact. So SAGRA has also signed a service level agreement with the department, which is a 10-year agreement. And SAGRA has also participated in the development of the agricultural and agro-processing master plan. So we are also co-signatories of this document. Then in terms of technology, I mentioned technology earlier. So it is a crucial component that empowers SAGRA to gather accurate information. Remember, we collect a lot of information. Our field workers, they're always on the ground. But it's one thing to collect information, right? But what you do with it is more important. So we actually have a system that we have. So after collecting information from the field, we actually store that data so that we safeguard it, right? And we also create dashboards for our clients. Sometimes our clients, they want reports, and so it actually makes it easier for us to get that information and be able to show them. And as you can see to your right, this is actually our M&E system for harvesting that we use. So we actually believe in the use of digitization and also artificial intelligence. And also, just to expand on technology, we also have agronomic and technical services, which actually helps us to monitor some of the activities happening on those farms using geographic information systems, right? So with this technology, we're able to monitor crop health, yield predictions. We're able to do that. We're also able to respond to any risks of disaster, and also manage climate data, and also resilience and adaptation. So these are some of the tools that we bring in, because we believe that the future of agriculture relies on technology. So we've already jumped in, and we also believe that our farmers are doing the same currently. Then in terms of sustainability and funding, I think it's important for you to understand that SAGRA doesn't have money. We're an NPO, so normally we get funding, be it as grant from the department or from the government, from corporate sponsorships, based obviously on a certain funding mandate, right? Then us, we are just a conduit that for development that delivers that mandate. Yeah. So we are committed to financial transparency, accountability, and long-term sustainability to ensure continuity of all our programs and activities. Then in conclusion, I would like to say that SAGRA is driven by clear vision and desire to make a difference in the agricultural industry. And for us, we actually see growing grain industry, and also we see an increase in the participation of Black farmers in the industry, participation of women, participation of youth, and also participation of disabled persons. With our nationwide presence, we are well positioned to make a significant contribution to the growth, sustainability of the grain industry across all 9 provinces. And through collaboration, I spoke about collaboration with government, private sector, community organizations. We are committed to our mission. We strive to empower Black farmers, promote agricultural excellence, and secure a prosperous future for the grain industry and the communities it serves. I've come to the end of my presentation, and these are our details. If you want to get in touch, our head office is in Pretoria at the Grain Building, and this is the address and the contacts. This is our telephone number there, and email address. Just drop us an email if you have any questions. We'll definitely assist you. And this is our website. If you would like to access more information regarding our organization, you can visit the site. Thank you, and thanks to the organizers.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shoko from SAGRA. We will, while our team is getting ready, the next presentation, I just want to ask again if please leave your email on the chat box so that our team can get in contact with you with regard to the presentations or information that we have on this webinar. May I also ask the previous presenters from SACTA, if they are still online, to put some answers to some of the chat box questions that we couldn't complete in the answer session. If you can just leave some answers there, otherwise we will follow up with you by email, but it will help if you answer some of the questions on the chat box right away, if it's like a easy to answer. Our next presenter is Dr. Sandile Nkampalala from Grain South Africa. He is leading the South African Farmers Development Program for Grain South Africa, summer and winter grain. And he's also the managing editor for the magazine Grain SA's Pula Imvula magazine. He's got a doctor's degree in environmental science, and 20 years experience in the field of agriculture. His work focuses on policy analysis, development issues, climate, food security, finance, water resources, and we welcome him to talk to us about the economics and future of grain and export opportunities. Then it's over to you, Dr. Sandile. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Program Director, and good morning to the rest of the workshop participants. I don't know if you can please just confirm if I am audible enough.
Yes, you're audible. You can speak a little bit louder if you wish, but we can hear you.
Okay, certainly. Thank you so much. I'm joining the meeting from the show here at Nampo Cape. So I have been in and out of the meeting a couple of times, but I was privileged to listen at least to the last three presenters. And I did hear the guys from SACTA who are also supporting farmers through our program as Grain South Africa. And I also heard Jeff Hlela, one of the farmers that is a member of Grain South Africa, and we are supporting through the SACTA funding. So congratulations and thank you for the opportunity. So my presentation focuses on the question of grain exports, basically where we're coming from, where we are at the moment, and where, or how the future looks like. And the question that was posed for us as Grain South Africa was relating specifically to support that relates to smallholder farmers. So I want to highlight that as far as our approach on grain economics and grain sustainability and trade really doesn't differentiate between smallholder and commercial farmers. Technically, it's about the quality of the grain, and if the quality of the grain meets the standard, that grain will access any market. So technically, the presentation is one that speaks to a smallholder just like as it does to a commercial farmer. So if you look at our program as Grain South Africa, the organization, really our focus is on influencing the economics of the sustainability of grain economics. Grain profitability and sustainability is really about keeping farmers on the farms, keeping farmers productive and feeding the nation and growing the economy. As part of that, is a specific objective related to growing and supporting developing grain producers. So this is technically black commercial producers, emerging producers towards commercialization. And of course, there is a greater focus in our organization to focus on young producer members. So as a farmers association, we are farmer-driven in terms of member-driven in terms of membership. But what we strive for is a greater younger membership, and that may come from new entrants directly. But in most cases, it's succession farmers that are taking over from their parents. And in our developing program specifically, we are already beginning to see second generation, maybe in some 2 or 3 cases, third generation farmers taking over from their parents or grandparents. And that's really a drive for the future and sustainability of our organization, but also of grain production in South Africa. And of course, there is, we're always striving for broader membership. If you look at the membership of Grain SA in South Africa, we represent basically about 35% of the grain output of South Africa. So our membership is based on tonnage. And if you look at the tonnage, we represent the actual income from memberships. We represent about 35% of the grains that are produced in the country. And of course, our estimation is that most farmers, because it's voluntary, most farmers do not pay on the entire output of their produce. But so our estimation is that we are possibly somewhere around 85% of the grains produced in South Africa are our members that produce that crop. And of course, we strive to achieve 100%. And for me, I think what is quite encouraging about this is due to the voluntary nature of the organization, it basically shows value of what we are trying to do. And of course, there is a great focus on the entire program to grow and maintain the key value chains relationships. For us, it's all about partnerships. So it's not just about the farmer, it's about the entire value chain. It's about the input suppliers, it's about the markets, the off-takers, millers, and some of the international trading partners that we work with, the traders, the JSE, all of the platforms that make it possible for grains to be produced and to be marketed and the farmers to make money. And we try to do all of this, it comes down to better communicating, efficient communication, getting the stories out to people, getting the information out to farmers. So every day, for example, we do a market commentary every morning, which you will find on our website. And if you're a member of Grain SA, of course, you will be part of a WhatsApp group that receives the market commentary every morning that tells you the market movements, tells you the futures, tells you what the grain market will look like in the next couple of months. And all of that information is made available to our members, and of course, by implication, to the public, you know, through our website. So if you look at our regional, our farmer development programs specifically that I'm leading at Grain SA, we have basically 10 offices that we are running through the program throughout the country, one of which is here in the Western Cape. And then we've got a program in the Northwest. We've got a program running in the Eastern Cape that borders on some parts of KZN in the Kokstad areas. We've got a program in the KZN Midlands, in northern KZN, as well as in Mpumalanga, some of the central regions. And then we've got two Free State developing offices that we run, one in the Western Free State and one in the Eastern Free State, Forisberg, Vicksburg, Bethlehem, those areas. As a matter of objectives, specifically to the developing producers, we've got a specific focus on smallholder farmers and new era commercial farmers. Our idea is to really scale up these farmers, to support their profitability, and to help them commercialize and be sustainable. And then we can move on to the next group of farmers, and so forth and so forth. And of course, in the program, there is a great focus on training, you know, that goes across the board of a producing farmer, around production, technical skills, business management skills. In the entire program, there is a drive at the moment that we are working on, which we've seen, you know, a great deal of our farmers taking up that opportunity. So all the farmers that we support have to be registered businesses. We are trying as far as possible to move away from supporting sole props and supporting businesses. And we are trying to help these farmers be registered for VAT, registered for diesel rebates, and everything that helps a farmer. You know, we mirror everything that we are doing on the farmer development program on any other commercial farmer. And for us, the idea is we don't want to start a dual economy. Our idea is that every black producer must plug in to the commercial space and to the commercial activities, just like this conversation on trade is the same for any producing grain farmer, that, you know, these structures work. If everyone is in the room and you are not in that room, then you are possibly, you know, it's like people say that if you are not on the table, on the menu, then where would you be? You know, so for us is to get every black farmer into the same boardroom with all the commercial guys, because that's really where there's a great wealth of knowledge and opportunity. And of course, a great deal of our program is really driven by one-on-one farmer support and coaching. We start farmers at study group levels, training, and some group activities like farmers' days, trials, you know, kind of work that speaks to the entire group. But the main target is really to zoom in on every business. So for every one of the farmers that we are supporting, there is a mentor that is attached to that business. And of course, in some cases, the number of visits that we can access to support farmers are limited by the thing that we target. A farmer must have a coach that he walks the road with to help him commercialize in an accelerated way, because we don't have time and luxury to commercialize forever. You know, we move from point A to Z as soon as you can. And of course, a great part of our partnerships and collaborations help us support the farmer to be commercial. And crop insurance is a key part of the support we are able to provide to farmers. soil corrections is a part of that. So liming of soils and physical corrections, contours and waterways and things like that. And of course, the entire program is really about moving a farmer from a study group, sort of small scale farmer, all the way to becoming a commercial farmer. Now, if you zoom in on just the grain exports in the country, we've seen really an upward trend that total exports of grains in the past 5 years, and the makeup, the actual makeup of those grains, with yellow maize being the highest crop that we as a country are exporting, followed by white maize, and the soybeans. And of course, soybeans have really shown growth in the past couple of years, and really thanks to SACTA and the work that they are doing on the breeding and the technology that they're bringing with breeding companies, on soybeans, but also the support that they provide to the sector. So we are seeing the hectares on soybeans really skyrocketing. I think in the past year we planted over 1 million hectares in the first time, and it's showing on the exports as well. If you look at the countries that we have as a country been successful to access in the past 5 years, these are all new export markets. You can see there, I won't go through all of the lists. I think what's interesting to note is that on wheat, there hasn't been any new markets in the past 5 years. The trading partners in terms of countries remain really the local neighbors in the region in Southern Africa, Botswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. So basically here we're looking at about 200,000 tons of wheat that we export. But of course, South Africa imports a net of about 1.8 million tons of wheat into the country. The interesting thing about wheat, maybe just for the meeting, is that in production really stagnating. If you look at the dotted line that represents the production in tons, sitting at 2 million tons of wheat that we produce, you can see the exports have the imports on wheat have grown significantly, over the years since almost about 10 years ago to where we are today. And this is really a function of profitability in many cases. So farmers, as much as they want to produce wheat, the margins are also extremely in the Eastern Free State, less wheat being planted in the past couple of years, and that's also a function of too much rain and the risk that the crop experiences there. And this year I've been here in Caledon since Monday. It's a beautiful crop and things are looking amazing, but as a country we definitely have a challenge. We still have to import about almost 2 million tons of wheat to sustain our processing needs, particularly for things like bread and flour. In terms of the imports, it's the top 10 countries that we are trading with. Ukraine is one of the top countries on average in the 5 years. But of course, the data coming into the new market for wheat will most probably drop that average significantly for Ukraine due to the issues they are having with Russia. But of course, Canada and the United States are the next
I'm sorry, Doc.
biggest importers. Yebo.
Your presentation, your slides are not moving from our side.
Are you on now?
We're still on strategic objectives.
It could be that he's got a problem from his side that it wouldn't move on. So if that is the case, we'll share the presentation. You can continue, or maybe one of the presenters this side can then flight it.
Okay, I'm gonna try to flight it again, and let's see if it moves. Just a second. Can you see the presentation?
Not yet, Doc.
And is it moving now?
Nothing.
Hey.
I think because he's doing it from a public area there at Nampo Western Cape, maybe that could be part. Maybe the best would be if our back team presenters upload it, if that is important. Otherwise, just go ahead and we'll circulate the presentation.
Yes. Okay. Let me do that. Let me finish the presentation. I think I will share it directly with your presenters. Okay. So basically, I was just highlighting the importing relationship that we are having with Ukraine, which is the top country that we have been trading with for the past 5 years. And if you look at the yellow maize exports destinations for South African yellow maize, a great deal of our maize in the past 5 years went to Spain, and Mozambique being the second importer of South African maize. And of course, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia, as well as Swaziland, are some of the key partners for our maize, yellow maize. The other partners that we've been trading with includes countries like Japan, Taiwan, and Vietnam. That is really some of the key markets that we've seen grow in the past 5 years. In terms of white maize as destination for South African exports, the top countries that we are trading with on white maize, Tanzania it's one of those countries, but I think the greatest country we are exporting with is Botswana. Botswana takes a great deal of our maize. And then some of the countries that we are also working with on white maize is certainly in Southern Africa, all the countries that are neighboring us, Zimbabwe and Botswana being the highest importers of South African white maize. And of course, in Europe, there is Portugal and Italy that we are trading with significantly in the past 5 years. Then, in terms of the markets going into the future, the prospective markets that, as Grain say, we are supporting the state to secure, really speaks to Egypt as one of the key markets we are looking at, and Indonesia for soybeans. And then for wheat, we are seeing on the prospective market with China for wheat. Some of the positives, I think, that have come in recent times, maybe in the past year, in terms of the marketing of white maize in particular, has been Mexico. That has been taking a great deal of our maize. Now, most of the South African maize is transported by rail and road. So road is the highest transporter of South African maize, about 85% on average in the past 4 seasons is being transported by maize. If you look at rail, it's really been dropping since 2006 to currently almost about less than 10%. So almost from about 39–40% in 2006 to about less than 10% of maize currently being transported through rail. And of course, that is really a function of the failing infrastructure, particularly on rail, the cable theft on the rail line towards the port in Durban in particular, but also just challenges relating to road infrastructure, making it difficult to move grains. The other challenge that it's critical maybe for the meeting to note really relates to the Durban harbour. So export, in particular, and large quantities of maize need to be exported. There is generally a backlog in the Durban harbour, as a function of either imports or exports. That makes it difficult for the grains to move as soon as possible. And this also makes it quite a difficult challenge to import wheat in time. Load shedding is certainly that we have become familiar with, and some people have become used to it, but certainly as the grain industry, particularly irrigating farmers, we are really seeing farmers being hit very hard by load shedding, not being able to irrigate. If you start a center pivot, just before it warms up and starts irrigating, the power goes, and breakages because of the on and off issues with power. And of course, South African farmers, grain farmers, are competing at the international level with farmers that are generally subsidized. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to make to make ends meet with the kind of prices that we are seeing on grains. So you see that most of the grains, in terms of the output price per ton, has really been stagnant, but the input costs has skyrocketed. So the only way you can stay profitable and competitive is if there's somebody holding your hand in terms of a big brother, like a government that supports, subsidize farmers. And of course, we have to congratulate the state on things like the diesel rebates and some of the tax incentives that farmers, enjoy for zero-rated products, like chemicals, fertilizer, and seed that farmers are able to buy without VAT. And that really helps. But also, where we do pay VAT, there is a cash flow opportunity that government allows us to be able to claim and submit those returns in cycles of 6 months. That helps farmers, but it's certainly not enough. We should be doing more. Otherwise, South African farmers, especially because we are not isolated, we are price takers more than price setters. So we've got to be able to be competitive globally. And really, that's the long and short of. I want to just really take the opportunity to thank the organizers of the session. but also to thank our partners. You know, maybe in the call, I'm not sure if there are others, but I know SACTA is here. The South African breweries, PepsiCo, Vila, Kainok, the Maize Trust, the Oil and Seed and Protein Development Trust. Bayer is one of our biggest partners. Tiva, these companies, they really make our lives easy. And by extension, they make the lives of farmers extremely accessible. The KDF, Khodiso Development Fund, Standard Bank, AfCFTA. So we want to say thank you to you guys for making it possible for the Grain SA Farmer Development Program to run, for the organization to run, and by extension, on behalf of the Grain SA farmers and members, we want to appreciate every one of our collaborators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sandile Kampalala, for this very good presentation, and also to show us this is quite a long value chain involving a lot of partners, and that farmers can't farm alone. Exports is very important because this creates demand, and that we're really supplying the whole of the region with maize and grain. We will now open for about 10 minutes questions and answers. Please stay on, because after the questions and answers, we will take a short body break, and then we will proceed to the dry beans organization, as well as the Skuman group, that will present us the support to black farmers on and the role of exports for dry beans. So the floor is currently open for questions relating to Dr. Roy Shoko from the South African Grain Farmers Association, and to Dr. Sandile Kampalala from Grain South Africa. Just put up your hand, and then we'll take the first 3 to 5 questions. I don't see any hands. I just want to ask one more is there any hands? Is there any questions on the chat box? Otherwise, if there's no questions, then we can proceed with a body break.
Chairperson, maybe if you may allow me just one response I see from the chat. There is a couple of questions that relate to Grain SA.
Yes, proceed. Maybe you could just say in short what was the question and then answer those in the chat box.
All right, I think there's one question about the fact that there's a lot of talk about exports from the different partners that presented this morning. The DTCI, Grain SA and SAGRA. And the question is, if there are any collaborations between these partners? And the second question is also on partnership, SAGRA and Grain SA. So I'm going to start with the first one. So Grain SA's exports collaborations and every part of the work that Grain SA really in complement of the negotiators from the states. As a farmers organization, we don't have the mandate to negotiate on behalf of South Africa, but the government does. So the DTCI and the Department of Agriculture, Forest and Fishery, now it's DALRAD. So basically DALRAD does all the negotiations in conjunction with GTCI, is to support as a commodity partner with the evidence, particularly from the production numbers, the input issues, and some of the potential markets that we think are relevant to help us reduce the bottleneck of overproduce in the country. So we don't do it, definitely we don't do it alone. But for us in any level of action, it's about adding value. It's not about duplicating. So if a space has been taken, we will not want to try it. We stick to our aim, adding value to the farmers that we are supporting. So with all the negotiations for the sake of negotiating, but it's out of representing the of the organization in line with the objective of ensuring grain profitability and sustainability. Of SAGRA and Grain SA, the collaborations in many cases are really down to areas where there is common interests. So some of those things, for example, include the agro-processing master plan that's being done there, particularly relating to the grain compacts, and as well as things like maize grading, things like from our side that we've been leading for years, issues of the which we've managed to crack an opportunity for soybean as the pilot crop to be traded on a different model for the differential, and in some of those meetings that become of relevance to SAGRA, they are now and again joining into those meetings. But of course, as Grain SA, we've been championing most of these activities for years, and we continue to champion these activities. And for us, like I said, it's all about partnerships that add value to our members. So as long as we're a partner that creates value for our members, that partner will have to be on board. So it's not to tick boxes, but it's really to needs and gaps that we are able to collaborate and partner. And of course, then the wider partnerships, speak to the industry partners, the private sector, the public sector, international partners. We are here, okay, it's all about creating partnerships and collaborating. And I think that's maybe long enough of collaborating from our side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see there is a hand.
Yes, it's Dr. Roy. I wanted to add also. Yes, thank you, Chair. I also wanted to add to the second question, just adding to what Dr. Sandile has mentioned. I think as part of my presentation, I also added that we also, the work that we're doing, we also rely on some of our partners who also include the commodity organizations. I think what you need to understand, or what the audience need to understand, is that for us to actually achieve sustainable development, especially for emerging farmers, we cannot do it in isolation. Collaboration is key. So indeed, we do collaborate in areas of common interest that save both our organizations and as well as the farmers. Plus, we also participate in industry forums to also drive certain policy changes together. So yes, indeed, we do not work in silos. We do participate as and when there is an interest. Thank you.
Thank you. A question from Jeff Taylor, but while you're preparing for question, I just want to say on the chat box, there's also 2 other questions. The one is on the criteria that Grain South Africa used to select farmers, emerging farmers to participate. And the other question on the chat box is if there's any opportunities in the local grain market for small-scale farmers. So those are 2 questions on the chat box, and another question from Jeff Taylor. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So my question goes to Dr. Roy Shogo from SAGRA. I saw on the presentation they're looking to think more specific onto black farmers, assisting black farmers. Is there, from their side, is there collaboration with white commercial farmers to help assist black commercial farmers or subsistence going to commercial farmers? Speaking personally from what I've experienced and seen on my side, I get a lot of assistance from a white commercial farmer in my area, assisting me with equipment, machinery, and even mentorship. And I've seen that relationship does work and does help, especially if a young commercial farmer needs the technical assistance and thinking. Does SAGRA accommodate such relationships, and do they encourage such relationships to their small black farmers? Thanks, Chair.
Chair, should I answer that?
Please go ahead. The one is collaboration with white commercial farmers. The other questions on the chat box is the criteria of Grain South Africa to select farmers, and then opportunities for local markets for small farmers. Any of those questions that you can answer?
Okay, thank you so much. I'll start with the first one, and thank you, Jeff, for asking the question. Remember, we collaborate with anybody who serves the interests of our farmers and also our organization. So indeed, yes, we have collaborated with white commercial farmers, and we still collaborate with white commercial farmers. And just to give you a little bit of maybe an example, some of the mentors that serve in some of our programs are white commercial farmers, because we understand the institutional knowledge that they have that can actually assist our farmers to grow. So indeed, we do collaborate with them.
Chair, maybe can I just also go in there? So the question of grains opportunities locally. So basically, I think I highlighted this earlier. If you look, for example, at maize production, you know, the key competitive question is the grading of your maize. And of course, for us, we've seen that the better the technology, the better the combining, the better the storage, the better the quality of the maize. You know, for example, the crop can almost rot in the field because of, you know, not being harvested in time and things like that. And those are things that make it a little bit difficult for black farmers, because the need to get that crop out of the field as soon as possible is increasingly bigger with them, particularly for crops like soya beans. If you don't harvest in time, the crop will shatter in the field. And by the time you harvest, you've moved from 3 tons to 1.5 tons, you know, 50% crop left in the field because of shattering. And the challenge there is that all the soya beans must be planted at the same time. There's no staggering. And all the beans must be harvested at the same time. So the combines are fully booked at the time of the need. So the access to machine time into the market makes it easy for a farmer. But the other question that becomes tricky for a developing farmer is that you don't have waiting capacity. So as you deliver, you have to sell. But commercial farmers do have the buffer to say they deliver to the silo, but they don't sell the seed, the maize. They hold on to it until the price gets better later in this season. But a black farmer probably owes a loan, or his cash flow is quite low. He needs the money, so he sells at harvesting immediately. And as it delivers, he sells. Otherwise, you sit with a situation where you must pay back a loan, but you must also buy inputs for the next season, and you can't get that credit without settling the loan. So as a black farmer, you are really tied up in terms of what you can do with the market. But the other thing is really the fact that grain marketing is down to the quality. Whether it's 1 ton or 50 tons, often it's just down to the quality. If you can deliver that grain, it will be procured. Somebody will buy it from you, and somebody will be able to trade it. So marketing problems for grains is not really on the side of taking. It's really more about the securing that crop in time to get it into the market, but also the returns that you get if you sell at peak of maize production, of maize harvesting, versus if you sell maize in December, and you can access a better deal. In terms of the criteria that we are using as Grain SA to access farmers, so the first thing that we try to look for is capacity to repay a loan. So most of the farmers that we support is not grant funding, so it's loan funding. So if you take an example of what SACTA is providing for farmers through this Grain SA program, it's a zero-rated loan. But if we're gonna give you R1 million to produce sunflower and you don't show the capability to do so, then we are not playing right with our responsibility with the money that we've been entrusted on behalf of SACTA. So often the farmer that is starting out, that farmer is better off starting out with a grant from the state. But as soon as that farmer is beginning to borrow money, the criteria is on performance. And for us, performance is generally history of working with you as a farmer, history of being trained within the Grain SA program, and moving in terms of graduation. So we've got 4 categories of graduation, from 250-ton club to above 2,000-ton clubs. Those people, those farmers have demonstrated growth, and out of that, we are able to entrust funding to them. And as such, some farmers, through our program can access even up to 7 million rands through different partners that we are working with. But you cannot borrow that kind of money to a guy that just cuts in the line. So basically, it's people that have their skin in the game, they've been around and they've done the work to demonstrate evidence of performance. I think the last one maybe relates to the question from Jeff, but specifically to SAGRA. But from our side, I just want to specifically mention that we actually thrive on collaborations. So of course, in our platform, we've got enough white farmers that are commercial, and out of that effort, we are able to link commercial partners. In fact, even when we are struggling to access combines for a farmer, we are able, through our regional managers, to network and use the connections and networks that we have to bring in that assistance from the commercial side. But I want to just encourage and emphasize that if you are going to be successful as a black farmer, there is absolutely no way you're going to pull it off alone. In fact, I think a good example of this point is that if we have about 80% of the grains that are produced in South Africa being members of an organization like Grain SA, it tells you volumes, and voluntarily so. It tells you volumes about the value of association in an organization like this. Because otherwise, even the commercial farmers that have been producing grains in an excellent performance way for years, if those guys feel the need to be part of the Grain SA kind of community, there is absolutely no way a black farmer can be outside that room and still expect to grow or be successful. So it's not, for me, I joined Grain SA about 2 years ago. It's not about marketing the organization, but I can tell you, if I was a grain farmer, there is no way I'm not a member of Grain SA. And of course, I've seen many farmers that are members of many organizations, but here at Grain SA, they are also here. And that, for me, I want to congratulate, because it shows the farmer is using all the avenues available to their life to make sure that this business is successful, this business is given a chance to be effective, to be successful. So that would be really the long and short, and we encourage and try as far as possible, even for funding that is dedicated for black farmers. We try to find a way to convince our partners that this relationship is key for us. It's gonna actually accelerate formation more than it's going to stall it. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much for the speakers. It's very encouraging to hear that we can't do it alone. We have to get assistance. We need these organizations. There's good results and it's growing. We also know there's a big international demand, because this is a long value chain. This produce grain go also in animal feed. Many countries has got policies of producing and exporting animal feed, and they've got a growing demand for meat. So it's not just people that eat grain, but it's a long value chain. It goes into agro-processing. So keep in mind, all these demand pool make that many countries cannot be self-sustainable, and that the demand for grains is ever growing. So that will close our session. Thank you very much. You can still put questions on the chat box, and we'll follow up those questions. But I'm going to close the session now. We ran a little slightly late. We're going to give 5 minutes body break for those who want to go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, and then 11:45, in 5-6 minutes sharply, we will have our next presenter, Mr. Chris Kleingeld from the Dry Bean Organization, to speak about using dry crops as intercrop. And also Mr. Kali Kutsia, and as well as Success, speaking on dry bean intercrop. So we're just taking a 5-minute break, and then we're going to have a discussion and presentations on dry beans. So that would be the end, and see you again in 5 minutes time, 11:45. And if you haven't dropped your email, just drop it in the mailbox so that we can send you all the information. Thank you. All participants, I'm back. I think we'll give another minute for those who still grab the cup of tea. And while our team make ready for the next presenter, Mr. Chris Kleingeld, I see he's already making ready in front of his camera. And then you're welcome to start uploading the next presentation. So Mr. Chris Kleingeld is from the Dry Bean Organization. They are, as mentioned by the previous presenters, you can't do it alone. You're going to take hands with a producers organization, with an association, because the knowledge, the cumulative knowledge of what works, what doesn't work, what is risk, It's known by the group of experienced producers and associations. So Mr. Chris Kleingeld, he's the head of the dry beans organization, and they're involved in various fields of seed production, research coordination, trade and exports. He's going to share his experiences with us. He's got a science degree, honors in science and agronomy. He also previously had various positions with other industry bodies like potatoes and the dry bean industry, the predecessor Dry Bean Producers Organization, DPO. And yeah, he's very passionate and optimistic about agriculture and the role in food security. And he's going to share to us the practical aspects to consider producing and exporting of dry beans. You may go ahead, Mr. Chris Kleingeld.
Morning, Chairperson. Morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's clear. You can speak.
I did try to share the presentation, but I haven't been too successful. So can one of your team please put the presentation on?
Yes, the team will upload the presentation. Sangeeta, Sonda, please, from your side, upload.
Maybe just a little bit of background while they upload the presentation. The Dry Bean Producers Organization is an association of members. So we work for a dry bean farmer. So you become a member by producing dry beans. And we have mainly three functions. The one is to gather information and to distribute that information to role players to enable them to take decisions. The second main focus would be coordination of research, which mainly entails development of new varieties to make sure that we have good quality seed available to industry. And the last aspect would be to see how can we promote the consumption of dry beans in South Africa. The last part, if you look at the decline in consumption, we're probably not at the moment too successful in that part, but there are other reasons as well why there is a decline in consumption and in production in South Africa. So yeah, but let's go more to what we want to talk about, and that's see where we fit in the export world with specific reference for dry beans. So maybe you can just go to the next page. Maybe just the first is what is dry beans and where do we fit in? Dry beans is one of the crops in the pulse group. There are 11 pulse crops in the world that's of significance, of which dry beans is one, broad beans is another, peas is one, chickpeas, cowpeas, pigeon peas, lentils, and also bambara nuts all form part of the pulses. You can go to the next page. Why are dry beans important? It's a sustainable crop in terms of high water use efficiency. It takes about 50 liters of water to produce 1 kilograms of pulse. Compared to other crops, if you look at soybeans, about 251 liters, and peanuts up to 428 liters. Pulse crops in general is very popular in the developing world, and it gets consumed there also much larger than in the developed world. We will get to the contribution of the different countries a bit later. And also about 25% of pulses are used as feedstuff. So it's not only for animals or for human consumption, but also contribute largely to animal feed in the world. You can go to the next slide, please. Then who are the big role players? You can go one slide further with specific reference to dry beans. And this is a extract from the FAO data. In 2021, the world produced about 27.7 million tons of dry beans. The three big players is India, Brazil, and Myanmar. And yeah, if you see in the top 20, we're not featured there. If you go to Africa specifically, you can go one down. It's fine. The next page, please. If you look at Africa, Africa produced about 7.5 million tons. And to come to South Africa, we're only 19th in Africa and number 54 in the world. So one statement or thing that's for sure is South Africa is not a very big player in the world, seen with reference to dry beans. There are opportunities, but they are not very big at this stage. I'll come a bit more to the details. So in essence, we are very small when it comes to the world of dry beans. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. When we look at import of dry beans, we are net importer. We have been a net importer since 1991 when the surplus scheme was removed and we become an open market. This is the figures that we get from SARS in terms of imports, and this is for the year 2022. We imported 7,000 tons, more or less, from a few different countries. What is interesting is that we get dry bean imports all under the same code when you look at the SARS data, but when you look at the different countries, there are big differences in where what type of beans it is. So the biggest importing country into South Africa is Poland, and with a volume of 1,300 tons in 2022, that's large white kidney beans. And Poland in Eastern Europe is probably the only country that can compete with us in terms of our requirements for the local market. But for us to compete with them in the international market is very difficult for various reasons. But I think the most prominent with regard to large whites is that our climate in general is not conducive for large white production. Then when you Ethiopia, and you will see that the one reference is from Djibouti and the other one's from Ethiopia, but about 1,600 tons combined. That's small white beans, mainly used in our canning industry. Then the red speckled beans, about all of the rest. So there are big players in Southern Africa that import to us. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. When also a large volume of imported product, in other words, canned beans that's already in the can. And so if you go into any supermarket today, you will see some of the house brands are all imported beans, and mainly from Italy. I think the reason there probably would be that we can't compete on the processing side with the rest of the world for various reasons. Some entailed to the structures in our marketing line, others more to our efficiency in certain areas. You can go to the next slide, please. When we go to export of dry beans, you will see during 2022, we exported about 5,000 tons of grain, of which 2,137 tons went to India, about 1,000 tons to Korea. The other one in Eastern Europe is Croatia, but all the other ones are Southern African exports with our neighbors, with the exception of Turkey and Portugal. So if you go back to where we sit into Africa, you will see that although they produce a lot in the rest of the world, there are also opportunities to be able to export to. You can go to the next slide. Export of canned beans is mainly small white beans or baked beans, and that's mainly to our neighbors, with the exception of Somalia and Yemen, that's a bit further off, but most of the baked beans we export is to our neighbors. You can go to the next slide, please. You can continue. The question arrives when we are so small in terms of the world, can we compete? And there's just a slide to show the bars are the local production. The brown line is the producer is consumption, and then the grey line is the producer price index. But you will see that since the abolishment of the surplus schemes, when we became an open market, we've been a net importer since 1991 up till today. And you will see the big decline in consumption over the last 4 or 5 years, and there's 2 reasons for that. Mainly, the one is the availability of product to be imported into our market at a reasonable cost. So it has, and the second is also the cost of the foodstuff was or is becoming expensive because farmers in the world struggle to make profit. But we are still a net importer, so we still need to produce for ourselves before we look at the export market as a viable option. Can go to the next slide, please. There's just an indication. The brown bars is the area for that we plant, and the green is the crop. But what I actually want to show here is the big variance in production between years. You will see that the scale on the left is not at 0, and that is a function of climate, and that's probably the biggest reason why the industry is not growing. Dry beans is a high input, high risk crop in general, and especially if you take the last 4 years, past 4 years, only 1 of the 4 years on average, the industry was able to make a profit from the dry bean production. So when you look at the calculations in terms of input cost, it seems like a very viable crop, but it's not as simple as that, because when you factor in weather risk and poorer quality of product, you can't get it sold. So that weather or climate risk is probably the biggest reason why the industry is not growing in South Africa. You can go to the next slide, please. The risk of the market. You will see the bars, the green bars are local farm gate price for red speckled beans in South Africa, and the red line is the import parity price into Durban. But what I actually want to show is if you look at the variance in the bars over time, and that's monthly scale on the x-axis, you will see that the market can be quite volatile and can move quite, make big adjustments in a short period of time. So, and on the top also, if you look at the variance of the import parity, that's a function of the dollar price and the exchange rate. It gives you an indication of the volatility of the world market in general. So if you use the red line as an indication of volatility on the market at large, it shows that there's big variance and also a big risk. Probably the risk there is twofold. The one is that from the time you need to make a decision until you export, you need about 6 to 8 weeks. And you can lock in the exchange rate and everything else, but it's, despite that, still difficult to make sure that you can exploit the market. And just with reference to an earlier presentation where they asked about the market, if you want to use the export market effectively in terms of exports from South Africa, our export window is probably about optimal from about the 15th of June until the end of July, which only gives you about 6 weeks. And it's very important to make sure that firstly you have the product, and second that you have the quality to meet the standards of your clients to be able to supply. And for the current season, that was a big problem, that we didn't have enough good quality beans that we could export in terms of what the market in the world requires. You can go to the next slides, please. You can go, okay. Just a few practical things to consider now that we know how the world looks like. There are huge differences between the types of markets. So you have to know your market to be able to participate. a type of dry bean. In other words, is it a small white, a red speckled, or large white kidney bean? Where you want to go in the market. If you go to Eastern Europe, they require round, big seed bean. If you go to India and that markets, you need a long shape bean with a specific background color, which is different from the ones that you see there. I've lost my presentation, so I'm just gonna continue on my side. Just that I have that point. So in terms of if you go to India and those places, in terms of your market, they use a different type of bean that you would use in Eastern Europe. So in general, for exporting beans, you need grading of the effective and split beans combined of about 5%, of which you will normally make 1% splits when you load containers. So that means effectively you can only work with 4% effective beans for exports in general, which is a problem per se, because that means you will have to additional clean or handpick the stock to the standard for the export market. And the more you take out, the more or the less sellable product you have. Then there's different labeling requirements from the different clients and different packing requirements. So all those need to be taken into account when you want to export. Then to be able to participate, you have to have volumes and of the required quality and a uniform product. I think although South Africa has established itself as a role player in the export market, the fact that we can't year on year present the world market with sufficient volumes of the correct quality is also a reason why we're not regarded as a big player in that market. And that's mainly a factor of the weather. If you look at the last 2 seasons, the weather played a significant role in our ability to be able to export. One has to have an understanding of the risks that are involved with export. So interesting to us, when you look at the industry at large, it's the biggest importers that are also normally the biggest exporters of dry beans. There are definitely consideration into food safety that has to be taken into account, especially with regard to Europe. There are a lot of prohibited chemicals that we do use in South Africa that is registered, and in some instances that we would require to be able to produce efficiently. And those chemicals are not allowed in some of the European countries. And then the other thing that one needs to take into account is to make sure that you've got available resources. For instance, if you take the use of a specific variety that you need for a specific market, most of the seed companies do their planning in terms of availability of seed 3 to 5 years in advance. So that needs to be taken into account when you want to access the export market. And also the other inputs in terms of availability and pricing, you need to make sure that you have access to the imports to be able to export. And then lastly, it's becoming one of the previous guests also talked about logistics, but it's becoming an increasing difficult aspect of export and of moving product in general. So if you take, for instance, this current year, logistical costs from inland to the export harbors increased by almost 50%. And there are various reasons for that, of which fuel is only part of the reason. So with that, it's the end of what I think. So I think the take-home message here is we are a small player in the world. We need to know our markets because there are specific requirements in each market. It's not a one approach will fit all markets. And be sure to make sure you've got the right product for your market. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chris Kleingeld, for your effort that you gave to give us a good overview of the industry. I know that protein is a very important food these days, and we also appreciate that this industry is going through difficulties for production, and it's also very important that this could be a part of a portfolio of a farmer. So, but let's go straight away to our next presenter before we open for questions and answers. So our next presenter, we've got the privilege of having Mr. Kali Skuman. He is the Group CEO of Kali Skuman Farms, and he is from Witklip in Delmas, where they also have the processing factories. He's going to give some background on the vision of Zamukele, the development initiative that they have. I've been told that they're the only large emerging support group that they're really organized and help a lot of emerging farmers with this industry. So he's been a long time in the family business as a managing director, also having to turn around family farms that were previously in debt and had to refocus them and share his experience with us. He's got a passion for development, and he's also made available Mr. Success Mudluli, who's the project manager of the Zamukele project from the Skuman Group, and he's Mr. Success is a crop production specialist and also a rural development extension officer, and we welcome them to present to us dry beans as an intercrop with grains, to give us the opportunities, the risks, and the realities of farming with dry beans. Mr. Kali Skuman, please.
Good afternoon, Ezra, and thank you very much. And good afternoon to all the participants. And it's a privilege to be part of this discussion because it's so important, and it forms part of the objective that we have at Skuman Boerdery with Zamukele. And our main aim is to develop emerging farmers to become sustainable commercial farmers. So we've been involved with this whole process for the last 5 years. The meaning of Zamukele means you are welcome to join us. So Zamukele is basically a partnership between Skuman being the enabler and the emerging farmers. And one of my farming friends one day said, "How long do you want us to call us emerging? We want to become commercial." And what are the road, and what does the roadmap look to go from small scale to commercial? So the first point that we assist them is with market access. And now we've listened to Chris, and we realize that South African bean production compared to the rest of Africa and the rest of the world is actually minute. And there is a reason for that. And it is definitely a high-risk agricultural product. And we've seen through the years that our biggest risk that we cannot control is climate. And especially with the production of dry beans, too much rain in the harvesting period can cause a lot of damage in terms of the quality of your grain. Not enough rain in the flowering or in the production period, and a dry spell can have a dramatic negative effect on your production. So that's the one point that we try to assist the farmers in terms of when to plant, which areas to plant, what sort of soil you must use, and if you are in a position to irrigate, that's also one of the risk mitigating factors that you can use. But as far as market access is concerned, the biggest portion of our small white beans go into the canning business, which form part of a very important alternative protein source going forward. And if you look at the figures that Chris presented in terms of the amount of water that you need to produce a kilogram of dry beans compared to the amount of water you need to produce 1 kilogram of lamb or beef, it is actually much more efficient in terms of water use. So what is important is that when we consult with our farmers, we can give them immediate access to the market in terms of the fact that they deliver their beans to our cleaning factory in Delmas. And there we actually make sure that we get the beans to a canning quality. There are very, very strict regulations in terms of the type of bean that you can end up in a can and you have baked beans and tomato sauce. The second thing is that they don't need to worry about the price. So as we've heard, we are the price takers, and we've got to negotiate the price with the off-takers before the season starts. And it's always difficult because as we are net importers of, there's always the competitive situation that we sit with, because the rest of the world is producing baked beans and tomato sauce cheaper than South Africa can do that. And you've seen that the imports from Italy, from Russia, which was the other country, is because of the fact that Poland, that they do get government assistance, and it's possible for them to, I can say, to dump beans in South Africa. So we've got to compete with the cheap imported beans that is available for South Africa. At least we can give the farmer a fixed price before the season. And then the next step is that we provide them with seed, certified seed and fertilizer. That makes it possible to make sure that you've got the right type of seed. And as Chris has indicated, you've got to book your seed well in advance. So we do that on a collective basis so that they do not have to worry about seed and fertilizer and the delivery of the seed and the fertilizer on their farms on 4 different provinces. This past season, we had 44 farmers producing beans for us, and they collectively produced 1,500 tons of beans, which wasn't below average crop. And you also saw the production figures that Chris showed us, is that our production is very erratic in South Africa due to climatic conditions. Then most important part is that the mentoring and coaching that has been done by Success and his colleagues, so that we can actually help them on the whole production cycle. And we've realized that some of them are really good farmers nowadays because they do not only farm with beans, but they are successful maize, soybean, and of course they've got cattle, which is so important for them to mitigate their risk and to have some form of cash flow whenever you need it. And we're now at the stage after we've had discussions with them where they say, listen, we need some courses and to help us in our skill set as far as financial planning is concerned. We've got to learn how to do budgets. We've got to go to a point where we can make a bankable feasibility study so that we can present it to the financiers. And this is the phase that we are moving in now. The other important point is that we try to integrate the value chain as far as all the input suppliers is concerned. So our partners, which we are in alliance with, will be the seed companies, the fertilizer companies, the crop protection companies, the banks, the insurance companies, and of course the high-tech precision farming programs, which you've seen. I think it was Dr. Roy that showed that you nowadays must have the access to a very specific application on your cell phone in order to have the satellite images that can actually tell you a lot of things of what's happening on your farm. And it also enables Success and his team to know what's happening on every farm, even if it's 300 or 400 kilometers from Delmas. That is our other objective. And then just to finish, I would like to say we've heard that it is so important that alone you are not going to survive in agriculture. So don't isolate yourself. You must belong to some sort of organization and organize agriculture. Through these structures, you will be enabling yourself to influence policy making and to help to prioritize and focus the functions of government and all the other role players so that we can have the best effect on development and transformation of agriculture in South Africa. I would like to hand over to Success. He's our project manager. He's a crop production specialist, and he's the mentor and the coach for the Zamakeli farmers. Thank you very much, Mr. Program Director.
Thank you so much, Umkali. Am I audible? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you so much, Program Director. And I think I'm just gonna fly through my presentation because I think Chris and Umkali have touched on basically all the points that I wanted to discuss today. But as we all know, the importance of planting beans as an intercrop for grains, for other grains, mainly your maize, your sorghum, and your wheat, is the fact that the beans are able to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and into the soil, which simply means that you have yourself nitrogen manufacturing small company while you have planted your beans, and that can also increase your production on your follow-up crop by up to 30%. And also when it comes to weed control, you normally spend less on your maize for weed control because of the atrazine that you can spray, which can control all your broadleaf weeds. We struggle a lot with broadleaf weeds when producing maize because you find that there aren't that many chemicals that can control broadleaf weeds, and if you have to plant your Roundup treated maize, you're going to have to spend a lot more money on the cultivar. So you want to keep it as affordable as possible because now the production costs are extremely high. And then as Omkali has already said, that the farmer already knows the price before planting our small white beans. The price is already fixed. Then as a farmer, you practically know how much you're going to make if you produce a certain amount of tons, which is something that's difficult. You're not sure with most of your agronomy crops. Next slide, please. So that's basically the advantages of planting small white beans. When it comes to opportunities, when you producing beans, you struggle with your mechanical weed control at a certain stage, especially on a good season, because now when you have enough rains and your fertilization program was up to standard, you'll see that your beans crop canopy will close a lot earlier than normal. And then you get to a point whereby you have weed infestation at the later stage and you cannot get in with a tractor. So which means that's job opportunities for the unskilled worker to come and help manually remove the weeds from your field. And also, when it comes to harvesting, the bean is not harvested normally like your soybeans that grows high above ground. The bean needs to be pulled out of the before you can come in the harvester. So what you do is there is machinery equipment that can pull the bean out, but it's a lot expensive. And also, when you the grain quality, you find that when the bean is now too dry, the picket that pulls it out of the ground of the grain, which means now you have poor grain quality, you'll have split grain. So manual harvesting can also be used by using the unskilled worker to help pull out the bean. And also the plant residue that remains after harvesting can be used to feed your cattle or your sheep or your goats, which is a very potent source of protein. So it's an advantage to plant beans, not just for the grain, but also for the residue that remains behind. As you can see there on the picture is a few bales from the residue of the beans harvest. Then we go to the risks and realities in dry beans. I think Chris and Omkali touched on climate change, which makes it a lot difficult to produce your beans under dry land. And given the fact then only for you to be able to harvest in May, the late planting of the bean to avoid your midsummer drought and so forth can result in you getting frost or hail later in the season. So you want to avoid such. So you have to plant at the right time. So planting time is the most important thing when producing dry beans. The dry bean seed or the crop itself takes about 60 days to reach flowering stage, which is a very critical stage. Now, if you plant a lot earlier in December, the crop might reach flowering stage during the midsummer drought, as we saw in the 2022-23 season. Then once the crop starts flowering and then you have midsummer drought, you'll probably lose about 50% of your flowers, which is basically your entire profits on the bean crop. And also like I mentioned before, that the high probability of hail damage in temperate areas may force the farmer to take crop insurance, which is something that's very expensive. And we have tried it before, but by the end of the season, your profit margins and your expenditure, it's pretty much you're working only just to break even, because you cannot go on without crop insurance. So that is something that we've been trying so hard to look at, to try and see if we can acquire a government subsidized insurance scheme, which would make it a lot easier for the farmer to afford insurance and still make profits while producing the small white beans. And also the mechanical handling of the crop needs to be done properly, because the cheap equipment has a lot of augers, and then once the bean goes through more than one auger, you're going to start breaking the grain, which now also reduces the quality of your grain. And it's difficult to get proper machinery, because the most simple machine that harvests your beans costs at least above 750,000, and that's just a second-hand double master, and that's the best harvesting machinery you can get, and it's not common because it harvests beans, maybe peanuts and other legumes. So a farmer would really go for a combine, which now will harvest your beans, your maize, your soyas. But now the problem with a combine is that it has too many augers, which is something that we need to avoid when we're producing small white beans. And most importantly, if you do not follow your spray program, you're most likely to risk your crop failure, because the spray program guides you when a small white beans requires certain chemicals, then you are now at risk of losing your entire crop, because now the infestation just keeps on growing and growing just because of that one spray that you missed. And also, once you mix too many chemicals in one spray to try and save money, you are putting yourself at risk of having crop failure. So I also put a small quote from the great George Washington there for you guys to endure. And I think that's my story for today. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for our presenters, Success and Wumkali. And then we'll proceed now with the next presenter before we take questions and answers. So our next presenter is Mr. Falose Fashe. He's from the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform, Rural Development, and he is from the Directorate Food Safety Quality Insurance. We know that quality is everything when it comes to exports, and he's going to highlight to us the regulatory and food safety quality requirements and principles to consider when producing grains and beans like maize, soya, and dry beans for export purposes. So Mr. Malosi is the manager at the Directorate Food Safety and Quality Insurance. He's responsible for the division agronomy, vegetables, and to regulate imports and exports, and the control of agricultural products according to the Agricultural Products Standards Act. And he's got 20 years experience in his field and has got a master's in his field. And we hand over to him to enlighten us about important aspects. Quality is very important, we can give over to you, Mr. Malosi. Please present to us.
Good afternoon, Program Director. Thank you. Thank you, listeners and our fellow presenters. As I've already mentioned, my name is Malose Fache from the Directorate Food Safety and Quality Assurance. Next slide, please. Am I audible?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. So I will take you through this contents today, the overall functions of the Directorate Food Safety and Quality Assurance, FPSUs, Agricultural Products Standard Act 119 of 1990, regulatory framework, gazetting norms, regulations and export standards, regulations and export standards and requirements for grains and grain products, enforcement, designated assignees, requirements for approval for the consignment, who is involved in the registration of agricultural remedies, sample for testing maximum residue levels, registers for grains, inspection and approval of presented for export, handling of complaints from importing countries or non-conformities. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The overall functions of the Directorate Food Safety and Quality Assurance is to regulate food safety and quality assurance in agricultural products. So all those products and grains that our fellow presenters have already mentioned, they need to be regulated so that they can be able to trade well in the markets, international markets and local. The objective is to regulate and promote food safety and quality of agricultural products, administer the following acts and its subordinate regulations: the Agricultural Products Standard Act, Act number 119 of 1990, the Liquor Product Act, Act number 60 of 1989, which we are not going to deal with it today. We also manage the levels of risk associated with food, diseases, pests, and natural disasters and trade. We also involve in registration of food business operators of agricultural products of plant origin. We provide analytical laboratory services in support of food safety and quality regulatory system. Next slide, please. Next slide. Agricultural Products Standard Act provide the control over the sale and export of certain agricultural products, control over sales and certain important agricultural produce, and control over the related products and matters connected with therewith. We regulate the quality and composition of the local products and for the export. So we also work with our assignees in terms of the food safety. We got the perishable control PPCB, which deals with the quality when you export. They do inspections at the farm level so that all your produce can comply with the standard that is available, so that you can be able to export to different countries. Next slide. Regulatory framework, export requirements. So there's application for approval for export. You have to apply for to export to different countries. We present the inspections for inspections, then the inspections will be conducted. So the consignment note will be needed. Also, the procedure for inspections will be in place. So assessment of the competency of the laboratories and the appeal procedures. So you need to, if there is any other things that you didn't go well, so there's a procedure that you need to follow for appeal. So in terms of the regulatory services, there is a regulation 707 that deals with the export, that the PPCB will be visiting the farms to check your products and check the record keepings and traceability purposes. Also the guides for agricultural practices and guides for application of HACCP, hygiene requirements for good agricultural practices, registration of food businesses and operators, and also we check on all the checklists that are in use. The standard and requirements for export, the requirements for approval is also, we deal with that. The standard for classes and grades of all those grades that we've been talking about there by our previous presenters. So there is a standard that we deal with it. So they are available within our directorate. If everybody need to access those standards, we can provide them with that. So we also check on the packaging and the marking requirements of all those products that are on the market, so that they are in compliance with the standard that are in place and also for traceability and requirements. The sampling method of inspection and quality and defects and allowable tolerances. The local regulations and for import and local and import. The restrictions over sales, the standards for classes and grades, the packaging, marking requirements, the sample methods of inspections, quality and defects, and allowable tolerances. So we also have the geographical indicators for the specific products that need to be recognized in our country, so that they need to be registered for those geographical indicators. Application for registration on South African GI geographical indicators. The registration of foreign GI that form part of international agreement. Auditing of registered South African GI. Trade control of registered GIs. So we also do the norms, gazetting of norms and regulation of export standard. Norms, regulation, and standard are validated by publication in the government gazette in terms of Agricultural Products Standard Act. So whereby we invite the stakeholders, including those who have presented here. We work hand in hand with them, like the Green SA, SAGRA. So those people that they are also involved, and also the community at large, they are also invited in Government Gazette to take part in the development of this regulation and standard based on the specific needs of South African market. We also work with the international standards such as Organization of Economical Cooperation and Development, the Codex Alimentarius, the International Standard of Organization. These other ones in red, where we're not going to delve with them today. The United Nations Economic Commission of Europe. So those are the international organizations that we work with. So in terms of regulatory regulations and export standards and requirements for grains and grain products, these are the regulations that we develop and share with our trading clients. So these are the products that we do the regulations on. It's a canola, dry beans, soya beans, wheat products, maize products, sunflower. The list goes on there. And also for the export standards and requirements, we also do the standard requirements for this agricultural products that are mentioned here, like the dry beans, the buckwheat, the groundnut, sorghum, maize, all those grains that have been mentioned. Thank you. Next slide. Enforcement designated assignees. So in terms of export, we deal with the Perishable Product Export Control Board, which is PPCB. They are the ones who will do the inspections at the farms to ensure that your products complies with the required standard, the available standard that are used in the country. So they do all the products that are intended for export. So for local markets, we have assignees which have been appointed by the minister, which is we've got one like product control for agriculture, which is PROCON, so which deals with all fruits and vegetables, including the vegetables around the country that are produced for local and for export. Export is still by PPCB. And then we got SAMIC also that deals with the classification of red meat. We got currently we got the leaf services that are still busy with the consultation for the grain and grain products. So leaf services will also be dealing with the grain and grain products. So far, the inspection is done by Directorate Inspection Services within the department. But in future, maybe leaf services will take over all these inspections that are involved in the country. So we had other assignees like Nijamugal Food Agency and Impumelelo. So some of them, they've been withdrawn from operating, like Nijamugal and Impumelelo are no longer in operation, but it's not for the grains, it's not for this specific. So we also have the laboratories that we work with. We got our national laboratories for the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, which is they're based in South and North. The one that is based in the North is here in Pretoria, and the one that is based in South is at Stellenbosch. So we also have other recognized laboratories that we use if we have a lot of products or near to the product that is being produced. These are mentioned here. All those other laboratories that are recognized by the department. Next slide, please. Requirements for approval of consignment: comply with the class and grade standards, comply with the containers of the packaging requirements, comply with the marketing requirements, sample are drawn randomly in accordance with the requirements, comply with the method of inspection as per the product type. We also have to comply with the prescribed tolerance of the product type. Product type. Next slide. Who is involved in the registration of agricultural remedies? We got the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and the Department of Environmental Affairs. Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development are involved in evaluating the agronomical effectiveness of the pesticide. We also issue the certificate of registration, data requirements for setting the MRLs, maximum residue levels, residue date evaluations, propose MRLs to the Department of Health. So in this sense, we got our sister directorate, which is import controls, which deals with this. So we also have our sister department, Department of Health, which deals with the toxicological assessment and classification of the pesticides. The MRLs, the establishment, publication and enforcement in terms of the Food Stuff and Cosmetic and Disinfectants Act number 57 of 1972. We also have the environmental affairs of forestry and fisheries. So they involved in the environmental and eco-toxicological assessment and classification of potential hazard as regard for the pesticides. So these departments work hand in hand in terms of the maximum residue levels that might affect your product in trade. Next slide. We got I got in case here the samples for the example of the samples that are taken by our assignee PPCB that are sent to check the maximum residue levels. So this is how they package the samples. They will have the name of the product there. It's a wet maize. They will have the production unit code or the food business operator code there is also mentioned. So, and all those other necessary information, the exporter or the farmer name also they are mentioned there. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, please.
Molossi, are you still there? I think you are. You must either unmute yourself, or if we've lost him, he will probably have to come back.
Okay, that's fine. So where did I lost you?
No, just on this slide, you can do the slide.
Okay. So these are the maximum residual levels that are registered. These are the active ingredients that are registered. So the local levels that are in South Africa on the next block here. So we also have other countries like the Codex levels are mentioned there. So we also have the European maximum residual levels also mentioned here. So we also have the export default that we use as to export if you qualify your products that doesn't exceed these levels, then you can use this export default. Thank you. Next slide. Inspection and approval of presented for export. All the regulated agricultural products intended for export, including grains and grain products, have to be presented for inspection to the designated assignees, namely Perishable Product Export Control. PPCB is the one that deals with the inspection for export. Thank you. Next slide. Handling of complaints from importing countries, non-conformities. So we got a system that is called the RAFS, Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed. So our contact point here is the Department of Health. So the Department of Health will inform us if there is any interception in the other countries that our commodities are not complying with some levels that we also shown to you on the previous slide. So from there, the Directorate Food Safety and Quality Assurance will notify the country in writing within 2 working days that we recognize the RAPs that we receive, non-compliances. So we'll also work with our Directorate Inspection Services and the relevant assignees in terms of this, which will be PPCB, to go and conduct the investigation to find out what happened in the farm, what chemicals did they use, and then check all the records also to ensure that the spray records and all those programs and agrochemicals sprayed and the dosages and the date application, withholding periods and the actual harvesting dates, that what happened actually to have those chemicals within your product, your produce. An example, an explanation of why maximum use was exceeded and a specific agrochemicals was used. So we need to gather all this information to ensure that we check the compliances so that they cannot repeat itself for future export. Directorate Food Safety and Quality Assurance will compile a detailed report and send it to the importing countries, notifying them about the non-conformities and what investigation happened, what was the results of the investigations. Next slide. I would like to end from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malose Fashay, for this stay online. We open now the session for questions and answers to our 3 previous presenters. One is Mr. Chris Kleingeld from Dry Bean Organization, and then from the Skuman Group, Mr. Kali Skuman and Mr. Success Mluli, and also from Mr. Malose Fashay on the food quality insurance aspects. So we open the floor for questions. Just raise your hand and we'll pick up from there, or drop a question in the message box. But I also want to say that the team have shared, there is a step-by-step exporter manual for processed fruit, vegetables, nuts, beans, and herbal infused beverages. And the link we have shared on the chat box, you can click there, you can click and download this exporter manual. It was jointly sponsored by the European Union to update and refine this exporter manual. And we've also, as Dalrad, the department has put a lot of effort into updating this information so that you've got a step-by-step manual on what to expect, who can you contact, and what are the key important things when you want to export any of these products that's got that's semi-processed or dried. So let me just see who's raised the hands. Success. Are you raising your hand? Success Mdluli, your hand is raised. Is this a question? You can go ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't raising my hand. I was moving from Kali's office to my office, so I mistakenly pressed the hand raising. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. Any questions, or can we continue with the next presenter? There are some questions in the chat box, but I also saw that it has been answered on the chat box. So you can also just put your question on the chat box and somebody will answer it if they've got the answer immediately. There's a hand from Ntosh. You can ask.
Good day, Chair, and everyone in the platform. My question is regarding the packaging of the beans. If Mr. Chris can refer us to the companies around Pretoria that can help with packaging. That is packaging beans into 5 kgs and 10 kgs. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, for export, they seldom use small packages. You can just send me an email to chris@beans.co.za, then I will refer to some suppliers for what he's inquiring, but for export, normally they use bigger packaging, not small packages.
Thank you very much, sir. Noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. It doesn't seem as there's any more hands. It was a long day. There's a lot of saturation when one deals with online. Having to listen for such an extended period. We still have 173 people online. Do leave your contact details, so we'll share all the presentations. There's also, you can re-listen to this. There will be a link, and we then go ahead with our next presenter, Ms. Victoria Ndau. She's from the Directorate International Trade Promotions. She's an agricultural economist with experience in the field of international trade and market research, and she have prepared for us the opportunities with regard to the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement that does provide especially opportunities outside SADC into what we call the AfCFTA 38, which is a countries north of SADC that didn't had any free trade agreement before, and now this agreement is into implementation phase, and it creates a large amount of opportunities, especially for grains. Ms. Ndau, yeah, she have been involved in these negotiations, trade research and trade and data analysis. Ms. Victoria Ndau, please go ahead with presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Ezra. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, but you can raise the voice. It's still fine.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Today on the platform, there is also Mr. Spamandas Mazivuko, who will be assisting me with questions and answers.
So, it's score question this 11 for sure.
It's just background noise. Maybe the team can quiet it down for us.
Okay, thank you very much. I will be talking about the update on the AfCFTA negotiations. The AfCFTA negotiations was launched by the Africa Heads of State of Government during the 25th Ordinary Section, which took place in June 2015 in Joburg. The objective of the CFTA is to create a duty-free single market for goods and services with the goal to increase the inter-Africa trade and deepen regional economic integration in the continent. The CFTA agreement brings together 55 African Union member states. The AfCFTA will see the progressive liberalization duties of 97% of traded goods. As I said before, the fundamental objective is to increase the intra-Africa trade. About 54 out of 55 countries have signed the agreement. To date, about 47 member states have signed and ratified the AfCFTA. This covers around 85% of the African Union membership. Furthermore, about 43 tariff offers on traded goods has been submitted. Agreed rules of origin now stand at about 88% of the tariff lines. Next slide, please. In February 2022, SACU finalized its AfCFTA offers. The offer covers 90% of the tariff book, which is category A. All SACU member states have signed and ratified the agreement. All the key trade instruments have been concluded. The outstanding issues include rules of origin on few chapters, which is auto sectors, clothing, and textile. South Africa is finalizing its administrative issues, which is gazetting and publishing of the offer. The SACTA tariff phase down is effective as from January 2021. So here I did the analysis on the grain sector. So I did with the rest of Africa for the period of 10 years.
We
so
don't see the presentation.
As you can see on the graph, South Africa is exporting more of its grain to SADC. It must be because already we have the SACU and the SADC agreements. So there is a lot of opportunities in Northern Africa, Eastern Africa, and also on the Western Africa. So next slide, please. So the analysis that was done, it was done using the realistic export opportunity, which we analyzed using the DSC model, which is the decision supporting model. So through our analysis, we're checking the potential opportunity for grains, largely in East Africa, Western Africa, Central Africa, and North Africa. So what I have found is that in the Eastern Africa, the export opportunity for grains market are for maize grout, maize flour, and the main countries are Sudan, Kenya, and the DRC. And for Central Africa, the main destination is Cameroon and Congo. And also the grain sector is for maize grout, which already have South Africa, they already on Central Africa, they are highly depending on imports from South Africa. So after the conclusion of the CFTA, which means South Africa will be able to export more. And also the key potential market is especially Egypt and Morocco. As mentioned by Dr. Sandile from Grain SA, Egypt has a high demand for maize and also Morocco, and this may be due to their livestock growth and expansion plan for their poultry sector. So thank you very much. This is my conclusion. Next slide. So this is the contact details if anyone has any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nda. Is there any questions on this presentation? Of course, we also have a larger study that we have done with much more detail. This is just a high-level summary. So if anybody would be interested in more information about broad-based opportunities, I see a question from Julie Mokwele. Please go ahead.
Short summary. I just wanted clarity in terms of how will the phytosanitary and sanitary measures work with the free Africa trade. My question is based on the issues where there is a non-compliance in terms of pest management of pests and diseases in other SADC countries. Which one would be more considered, considering that we are not on the same standard as like Africa in terms of how we are managing our pests and diseases. So I don't know if you understand my question, but I just wanted to know how is that, because I'm not sure if my section or my directorate is also involved in the whole discussion. Thank you.
Good. Maybe maybe our person from food safety, Malosi, if you're here, maybe you can answer that. But as far as I know, that South Africa has got its own standards and each country's got its own standards. And an exporter needs to comply with the import standards of the other country, and the other countries need to meet our import standards. So, but Malosi, can you expand on that?
What I can say on that is, of course, each and every country has its own standards. So we need to comply with their import standards. So there will be some documentation that they will send to you like an import permit that you need to check their requirements. So we still need to comply with the other countries' requirements if they are importing from our country. So they will issue a permit, then we'll follow the permit. What is the condition on the permit? Then we'll follow that conditions based on the permit. So in terms of the agreement between the other countries, in terms of phytosanitary and phytosanitary, that they will deal within the organization or whereby they communicate in terms of Africa trade. So they will have to engage each other and see how they deal with it so that we can facilitate our trade as quick as possible. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands here, more questions. Can then we close this? We close the session? Thank you all very much for your participation. We still have 164 people online from the peak of 210. And remember, do leave your email if you want to receive information. There is information about this, the presentations, there's the exporter manual, and there's also the link to this webinar if you want to review certain aspects of this webinar. And you can also send questions to the department. I don't know, Sangita and Asanda on the background, if you have got any email that they can respond any trade inquiries, that they can have an email in the chat box that they can use if there's anything that they would like. So that brings us to the end. We thank everybody for your patience and for staying with us throughout this presentation. Then we also want to thank the team of 4 from the National Agricultural Marketing Council and our department for dealing with things in the background. All the preparations was done quite a few months in advance. Thank you very much for everyone, for all the efforts and all the presenters and all the time and efforts that they have invested in this. If there is any more follow-up questions, please send that or put it on the mailbox for follow-up. And then we then would like to close this. I will just maybe recap quickly that we have covered the DTI schemes for export promotion and also SACTA, the South African Cultivar Technology Agency and their support. There was quite a number of interest and questions on support measures, how to access that. Also our development agencies like SAGRA, the South African Grain Farmers Association, and Grain South Africa, with their support and development arms, how to access that and how to access support and finance and support with regard to skills sets in production. And we also had our presenters from the soybean, from the dry beans organizations, presenting to us the opportunities, the risks, the benefit, both from the dry bean organization and the Skuman group. Thank you very much. And then we had the department two presentations, one on the quality insurance standards, which is very important if you want to export the product you produce, and Ms. Victoria Doe that presented high-level summary. Obviously, there are much more detailed documents available should one want more documents on export opportunities for grains or other products to the Africa Free Trade Continental countries. And that brings us to the end. My background team, if I forget anything, then we're closing this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Such a wonderful presentation. Thank you. Very
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.